playing the game either. They don't want to play the game of picking an alternative. It seems to me that that's what's so frustrating. They're fighting among themselves. Buttigieg, who may well be down in the pack, 5th or 6th, he could well win second place out here today and confuse all the pundits again. So it could be Bernie and Buttigieg once again owning the first 2 places. This could well happen again, and we'll be going into the Sunday newspapers and the Sunday shows tomorrow. Once again, frustrated. We will not have an alternative, and we'll have to wait till Wednesday to see if Mike Bloomberg has got his act together on the NDAs or not, and he probably won't. So this is going to be a very frustrating fight, except for the people on Bernie's side. Bernie is winning this thing and looks like he could win it without real opposition all the way to Milwaukee. That's the way it looks tonight here. In fact, it looks that way already here in the middle of the day. Back to you, Brian.
All right. Chris Matthews, thanks. We'll be coming back to you often. We are having results announced up in Reno. Gadi Schwartz is there. Gadi?
Yeah, some more peculiarities from this early voting versus the caucusing in person. So down there, they're just tabulating this. Over at the end of this section, there's 2 people standing there for former President Joe Biden. However, 16 people early voted for Joe Biden. So even though he doesn't have a significant line, he looks like is going to be viable in this precinct. But again, in person and with early votes, Bernie Sanders looks to be carrying this precinct. This precinct over here is about to start in their second round of viability. So they will, the people that were unviable will be marking down their second choice candidate. But it's the talk of this whole area, this caucus site. Earlier than this, a lot of people saying that they wanted to early vote. They didn't necessarily want to express who they were voting for in front of their peers, but they just couldn't make it out to early voting. And you've seen those numbers, significant amounts of people turning out for those early votes. We're talking about 75,000 people early voting this year, and only 88,000 or 86,000 people are participating in the entire caucus the last time around in 2016. So we definitely are seeing some of those effects of the early voting, but we're going to round 2 here in about 20 minutes, so we'll keep you posted. Back to you.
All right, Gadi Schwartz in Reno, thank you for that. Another break for us, and when we come back, we go back to the board. Steve Kornacki with another new round of numbers when we continue.
The following is a list of snow day closings due to inclement weather. All 2-wheel drive crossovers should close for the day. Wannabe SUVs should close for the day. Regular 4-door sedans should close for the foreseeable future. All Jeep 4x4 vehicles will remain open, despite the harsh weather conditions.
Now purchase and get $2,000 bonus cash, or well-qualified lessees can lease the 2019 Jeep Wrangler for $281 a month.
In America, we all count, no matter where we call home, how we worship, or who we love. And the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Because this is the count that informs where hundreds of billions in funding will go each year for things like education, healthcare, and programs that touch us all. Shape your future. Start here. Learn more at 2020census.gov.
When the threat from fire and water damage is at its biggest, hand the cleanup over to the team that stays with you until even the smallest detail is taken care of. From ready to restore to rebuild. 1-800-SERVPRO, the #1 choice in commercial cleanup and restoration.
I wish I could buy a new truck. Experience.
Experian. Now you can raise your credit scores instantly with Experian Boost. Free only at Experian.com/boost.
Experience!
Well, guys, no school.
Yay!
Come on.
otherwise known as a WeatherTech day.
Let's go.
So when the weather turns bad, you can still find a way to enjoy it with WeatherTech's laser-measured cargo liners, seat protectors, and floor liners. And to secure your phone, don't forget the Cup Phone. Order yours today at WeatherTech.com. The ultimate protection for your vehicle.
When it's time to sell your home, there's a lot of money on the line. How can you trust your real estate agent will get it right? There's good news. With HomeLight, you can compare actual performance data on thousands of agents near you, so you know who sells quickly, who sells for the best price. We'll match you with the perfect agent for your needs. And best of all, it's free. Sell your home for more money. Go to HomeLight.com today.
Things I want to do, but student loans were holding me back. Credible.com helped me save $600 a month with a great rate. Now I can go do what I want to do.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save on your student loans.
Participating in democracy, this is what it's all about. So it can't just be about money. It's got to be about people who show up and get the hard work done. So thank you all.
As we've seen, caucus goers never know if they're at the caucus that may be paid a visit by the candidate, but those folks clearly got to hear from Elizabeth Warren. We're looking at all our various caucuses across town. Some of them are in the midst of it, dividing into groups, checking for viability. We want to go on the west side of the city, Summerlin community here in West Las Vegas. Leanne Caldwell is at Palo Verde High School. Leanne?
Hey, Brian. Yeah, this caucus site is actually starting a little bit late. There's 4 different caucus sites around this high school auditorium. And right now, what they're doing is they're just getting their introduction, reading the letters from the senators and the governors. But what we saw, because they started late, there's this uncommitted table right here. And at this table was a couple people who were sitting here, and they were descended upon by some Biden supporters who was trying to convince these uncommitted people to support Joe Biden. And then the Amy Klobuchar people came and hovered and then injected themselves into the conversation. So these conversations were going on for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then they had to break up, and then they had to go get this introduction. And now what they're doing is they're just going through the process, and they're going to start the actual caucus process any moment, Brian.
All right, Leanne Caldwell on the west side of town. Over to the east side of town we go. Garrett Hake at a caucus at the East Las Vegas Community Center. Garrett?
Hey, Brian, we're still waiting to get started here. This is one of the bigger sites around Clark County, 10 different precincts accounted for here. And you can see the variance. We've got some of these precincts which are quite large, several dozen people here gathered from around their neighborhoods. Some of the precincts are quite small. We showed you on our last visit some of these empty tables here at the front of the room. Did some research with the Nevada Secretary of State. These 2 precincts have 1 registered voter and 3 registered voters between them. So not all precincts are created equal, but here at this site, the start time will be created equal. There's, I think, 1 or 2 people still checking in at the table behind me before each of these precincts can get underway. The first thing they will do, one of the first things we'll see, is that paper backup, the poster with all the math will go up on the wall. That's going to be really interesting to watch over the next couple of hours in all of these caucus sites. Remember, so much has been made of the Not an App, the iPad tool created to help do the math, but all of these sites will have the option to do this the old-fashioned way. In fact, a requirement to do their math on these posters as well, so that everyone here can see when we do eventually get underway here in East Las Vegas. Brian?
And Garrett, just one more question about something
What
you
happens,
ended
listen,
your last report on that we should go back and people make sure we're not kidding about. In the event of a tie, if you've spent any time in Las Vegas at all, you've seen the fresh pack of cards open and they go in the shoe at the gaming tables. In the event of a tie, they open a fresh pack of cards and they settle it that way.
That's right. This is not a drill. They need something to tie-break. There is a lot of rounding in the actual allocation of delegates process here, but if they find that they cannot round or they cannot break a tie down to 4 decimal places, it's a pack of cards goes open. The 2 interested parties, let's say the 2 campaigns who are tied, have a representative draw, and high card wins. It's as simple as that.
Garrett Hake at the community center on the east side of town. We go back to Midtown Manhattan. Steve Kornacki at the big board with new numbers. Steve?
Yeah, Brian, I think this is interesting. We talked a minute ago about one of the surprise findings we're seeing here in the entrance poll. Again, among moderates and conservatives. And if you look closely, by the way, these numbers have changed slightly since we last showed them to you. Sanders now with a 2-point advantage here. It had been 1 the last time we showed you. What's happening is we're getting a few more of these interviews added into the sample. So again, it's a surprise, I think, given how the campaign is typically covered. We don't think of Sanders as a moderate candidate, and yet he is leading among moderates and conservatives. A key reason for this is if you look inside the group of voters here in Nevada who are calling themselves moderates or conservatives,
starting on their second alignment so they can get finished here. I'm telling you that they allotted about 2 hours for each of these caucuses, but because so many people voted early, it looks like they're going to be done in pretty quick order here, Wolf.
Yeah, these are the early votes that are coming in. There's going to still be the final round. We'll see what happens if Buttigieg, for example, becomes viable once those votes are counted. Much more of our special coverage right after this.
Tom Steyer, Elizabeth Warren.
At today's Best Western, stay 2 nights and get a free night for your next stay. 1 night, 2 nights, free night. Book now at bestwestern.com.
No matter what business you're in, digital transformation never stops.
Verizon keeps business ready for what's next.
We weave security into their business,
virtualize their operations,
and can even build AI into their customer experiences.
We also keep them ready for the next big opportunity,
like 5G,
where machines could talk to each other and expertise could go anywhere.
When it comes to digital transformation,
Verizon keeps business ready.
The best way to describe the Dominican people is the most real, the most happy, grateful people. Warming, welcoming. Once you meet them, you'll be family.
They care from their heart, not just there's a tourist.
But I keep coming here because of the people. And they always say, hey, family, you're back. And it makes you feel good. I would say come. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
My name is April, and I am a caregiver. I've been with Nell now for 2.5 years, and I just feel like I am making a difference in her life. I know how much her family relies on me being there. It's about the bond that we form.
At care.com, you can find the senior care help your family needs. Search from lots of local caregivers with profiles, reviews, and more. It costs less than you think.
At 98 years old, she's enjoying her life.
Find the help you need. Care.com.
Want amazing looking eyes? Try Lumify, the one-of-a-kind eye drops that Allure magazine said could be a game changer. Lumify dramatically reduces redness to help your eyes look whiter and brighter for up to 8 hours. With just 1 drop, Lumify, you won't believe your eyes.
Whether you were born for more dance-offs, more travels, or more touchdowns, get the immune support that gives you more. Airborne's crafted blend has vitamins, minerals, and herbs. And No Gummy has more vitamin C. Airborne.
Reporters here at the Paris Theater.
Now.
On the Las Vegas Strip, we are joined by
something huge.
He's calling. The first big adventure of the year.
Are you coming?
Call of the Wild, rated PG, now playing.
Whatever she's in is
Super Tuesday. As we've learned from our correspondents, certain facts, certain observations. I've looked over at you. and I've seen a raised eyebrow. What has your interest from what was just reported in the last round?
Well, I think it shows Bernie Sanders showing real strength in the Latino community, what's going to matter in states like Texas, where a lot of people are already voting. That occurs on Super Tuesday, and in the African-American community. So both in Iowa and New Hampshire, Sanders won in the mid-20s. We'll see where things end up today. But if he's into the 30s, much less the mid-30s, I think he'll gain some delegates out of here and not an insignificant number. But what does that mean for California and Texas and North Carolina? And so he's showing strength here. And the difference between a front runner like Bernie Sanders, it's not 50, but mid-30s versus mid-20s could not be more important from a delegate standpoint. So he's showing real strength. The other thing that's interesting to me from a general election standpoint, you see the number of African Americans and Latinos identifying as moderate or conservative. You know, Trump's going to get blown out in those two demographics, but they see some potential there. And if they can just get a point or two extra out of there compared to 16, it can make the difference. So fascinating.
How long ago did your ballot arrive at your home in California?
About 10 days.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, over 1.3 million have been returned already. So that's the thing. When Sanders is doing well right now, and so as people in Texas and Florida and other states are voting, he's going to benefit from that scenario. So I think what has to happen in this race is somebody is going to have to emerge, ideally before Super Tuesday, but certainly after Super Tuesday, who's the main contender to Sanders and isn't just getting close. They're going to have to beat him by 20 or 25 points in states like Arizona, Ohio, and Florida to really get the delegates close enough. So I think what this shows today, again, now this is a caucus, it's not a primary.
Right.
So more activists. But Sanders' strength with the African-American community, I mean, he was in the single digits, 2 or 3 months ago in a lot of places. He's now climbed into the mid-20s here. There's polls in South Carolina showing growing strength there. So that is, I think, the big story out of here is Bernie Sanders is growing. Now, that sounds silly because he got over 40% last time, but that was a two-person race. So he's showing strength in parts of the Democratic primary electorate that I think if you forecast what that means in Super Tuesday and the other March states could not be more important.
I can't let you off there. Do you care to hazard a guess as to who that Sanders challenger may be who emerges as the definitive Sanders challenger?
Well, I think somewhat depends a little bit. It looks like we may have a bunch of people bunched up, but who comes in second here? Is someone like Joe Biden able to do well in South Carolina? Elizabeth Warren is showing some resurgence. But that's what's going to happen, because if Bernie Sanders has grown into the 30s with a diverse electorate, even if he doesn't grow anymore, if the rest of the field's getting 14, 15, 16, 17, he's just going to keep adding to his delegate pile every week. So I think some candidates are going to have a tough decision to make, though, because if you don't have the ability to get many delegates on Super Tuesday, much less after that, I think you have to take a hard look in the mirror about your ability to go on. We have the Bloomberg factor. The debate clearly hurt him. But you have both Steyer. I think something's not getting enough attention. We've got Bloomberg spending a lot of money. Yeah. He's going to get voting delegates. It all wouldn't have gone to a Biden, but would have gone to other candidates. Then you've got Steyer in South Carolina, who's polling at least at 20. And I think a lot of that probably does come out of Joe Biden. So I think the two billionaires in the race are definitely having an impact. I don't think they're likely to be the nominee. The other thing I'd just say about this contested convention conversation we're having, in my view, it's preposterous. Now, if Bernie Sanders has 1,400 delegates and somebody else has close to 1,400, then I think the convention could get interesting. But if Bernie Sanders enters the end of this process with hundreds of votes, first of all, on the subsequent ballots, the pledged delegates to the other candidates aren't bound to whatever their candidate decides to do. And I think a lot of them will say, the person who got the most delegates, I'm going to go for them. And the other thing, he's dominating with young vote. So the notion that we're going to say, you got the most delegates, maybe not a majority, but the party leaders have decided that the person who's got all that support from young voters, the future of the party, guess what? We're going to give it to somebody else based on electability. And right now, there's no evidence that would suggest that Bernie Sanders is so much less electable than the rest. Now, if by July, he's down 10 to Trump and everybody else would win, maybe a different question. And my prediction is, if there is a scenario that candidates are saying, we're going to go to a contested convention, I bet Trump's campaign lays off Sanders until July. Doesn't want to damage him. So they'll be ready, because I think they want to run against him. They may be wrong about that. So I think we have to watch that carefully, too.
Fascinating. Fascinating analysis. Boy, will this be interesting to watch as we go forward. There is talk of realignment going on in Reno. We're going to go there live right after this break as you look at some of our other caucus locations.
out the butter. Lobster Fest has something for every lobster fan, like wild-caught lobster, butter poached, creamy, and roasted. Or try lobster sautéed with crab, shrimp, and more. So hurry in and let's Lobster Fest. Or get it to go at redlobster.com.
Since my DVT blood clot, I wasn't sure. Was another around the corner? Or could things go a different way? I wanted to help protect myself. My doctor recommended Eliquis. Eliquis is proven to treat and help prevent another DVT or PE blood clot. Almost 98% of patients on Eliquis didn't experience another, and Eliquis has significantly less major bleeding than the standard treatment. Eliquis is FDA approved and has both.
Don't stop Eliquis unless your doctor tells you to. Eliquis can cause serious and, in rare cases, fatal bleeding. Don't take Eliquis if you have an artificial heart valve or abnormal bleeding. If you had a spinal injection while on Eliquis, call your doctor right away if you have tingling, numbness, or muscle weakness. While taking Eliquis, you may bruise more easily, and it may take longer than usual for bleeding to stop. Seek immediate medical care for sudden signs of bleeding, like unusual bruising. Eliquis may increase your bleeding risk if you take certain medicines. Tell your doctor about all planned medical or dental procedures.
What's around the corner could be worth waiting for. Ask your doctor about Eliquis.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins. Consuming us with a need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
Well-qualified lessees can lease the 2019 Alfa Romeo Giulia for $339 a month.
This commute's been pretty rough, huh?
It's great, actually. I've been listening to Audible. It's audiobooks, news, meditations. Gotta go. Hey.
You know, I do think it's weird you've started commuting when you work from home.
I'll be in my office.
Download Audible and start every day off right.
Replacing floors is a big job. Trust Empire today to get it done right. For almost 60 years, Empire has installed floors in homes just like yours. It's what we do every day. Your floors will be installed by experienced professionals. They specialize in custom work. Plus, we're not happy unless you are. And we've got more than 3 million satisfied customers to prove it. Professionally installed floors. That's Empire today.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
Hey, this is Senecot Kiwi Balance. It has a clinically proven ingredient to help support regularity. Who knew that a dietary supplement with a natural enzyme and prebiotics can help support regularity? Go Kiwi Balance!
Senecot Kiwi Balance. Celebrate regular.
This is the East Las Vegas Community Center. The serious business of the caucus has arrived. They are underway there in a town where numbers make it go. If you had 12:50 in some form local time as your number when the Bellagio caucus would be done, dusted, over, numbers posted, well, maybe you would have gotten a hearty handshake. Chris Jansing standing by at the Bellagio where, Chris, it's all over but the shouting?
Yeah, I mean, I've covered a lot of caucuses over the years. This is the fastest one I've ever covered by far, less than an hour. It really...
Dusted, over, numbers posted, well, maybe you would have gotten a hearty handshake.
Yeah, I mean, I've covered a lot of caucuses over the years. This is the fastest one I've ever covered by far, less than an hour. It really was finished except for what they're doing now, which is figuring out the delegates. Here's the final numbers. Three caucus goers here went to Joe Biden for 36. In the end, they almost split the folks who were here for Elizabeth Warren. Two of them remain uncommitted, and really all that's left is to decide, as I said, which of the folks who are here are going to end up being delegates. But this was as smooth as could be. Right before it started, Tom Perez was here, obviously the chairman of the DNC. We're asking him a lot of questions about could this be another Iowa. He kind of smiled and chuckled and said we've got Harry Reid here. This one went very smoothly. I can't see anybody waiting in line the other caucuses out there, but I can tell you that this one went very smoothly. I didn't see anybody waiting in line more than 5, 6, 7 minutes, and everybody here is going to be back on their shift because most of these folks are in the middle of their workday within maybe 5 or 10 minutes, Brian.
Yep, Culinary Workers Union, the men and women who make this city go. Fascinating results there at the Bellagio. So, Steve Kornacki, these are real numbers, real reporting coming in real time from the Bellagio, for example. And what does that tell you?
So let's compare some numbers here. I just was jotting down what Chris Jansing was telling us from that Bellagio caucus. And by the way, these are not ordinary precincts in terms of the county delegates that are being awarded here. These are jumbo precincts. So to win there is to really get a lot of these delegates. According to what she just told us, Bernie Sanders got 62% at the Bellagio. These strip caucus locations in 2016, he got below. Oh, yep. Go ahead. Back to you.
We're going to go to Gotti Schwartz only because there's apparently been a tie in Reno. We'll come back to you, Steve. Gotti, what do you got?
Yeah, so that tie is going on right now. As we've been talking about here in Nevada, the tie goes to the high card. They just decided that Ace is low card, and
Bernie's campaign pulled a 2 and plus.
Bernie's.
Sanders' campaign pulled a 3.
Okay, so Bernie's campaign pulled a 2, and Buttigieg pulled a 3, so it appears as though the tie goes to the high card, and that is Buttigieg. In this case, this is Nevada caucusing live at work here. We're going to go up to the board. They're going to tabulate it here, and this is the result. The tiebreaker goes in. 3-7. Wow. Result after a tiebreaker. You just saw it right there. We're going to see what happens over here. This is the second realignment over at the other precinct. We've got a moment where Klobuchar, she qualified. She got the enough of the votes, and then afterwards, Elizabeth Warren did not. So there was a lot of negotiating going on over here, trying to bring people in to support Elizabeth Warren. And it looks like they're tabulating that over there, but they ask us not to cross this line. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to get close enough to see exactly who's going to take it. But we've got all of this settled within a matter of 30, 40 minutes. So we should have a result here in the next 5, 10 minutes. Again, the tie going to Buttigieg over there. And here we are expecting to see who is viable after the second round of realignment coming up. Brian?
Hey, Gotti, if you could grab that 2 card and 3 card, because they're very valuable in blackjack. Thank you, Steve Kornacki. To Nicole Wallace, And our friends there in New York, and Nicole, I think, again, it's all about odds. What are the odds that we would go to Gotti Schwartz and see a tie broken with the draw of a card?
Well, I think I've said this every day that we've been on. We have no idea what the voters will take from any of the things we cover. We leave it to them. They may think it's exquisitely beautiful. They may think it's a goat rodeo. I do not know. Your guess is as good as mine.
Pretty fascinating to watch democracy decided by the draw of a card.
Correct. And you may love it.
Yeah.
And it may terrify you. I have no idea what voters think about anything anymore.
Let's talk a little bit about the jumbo precincts that Steve was just talking about. You know, I remember in 2008, Obama got the Culinary Workers Union endorsement and almost assuredly lost those precincts.
Why?
Because I think, quite frankly, the leadership gets listened to, but the organizing underneath it was stronger for Hillary than it was for Obama. And I think that's the case today. And if you look at those Latino numbers, the Hispanic vote numbers, and the early entrance numbers had it at 51% from Bernie. Those are the voters that have seen the sheets that Culinary handed them about Medicare for All and decided to vote anyway for Bernie Sanders. What does that mean for his ability to organize Hispanic votes? As David Plouffe said, what will that mean for Texas, where Bernie Sanders is today, for California, for Arizona, for Florida, for Colorado?
Well, you've done this. What does it mean?
Well, I think what it means is you're seeing a campaign that, in now a much more diverse territory, has strength beyond just the vein of voters that we thought he had in Iowa and New Hampshire, right? If he's gaining among African-American voters and competitive with somebody like Biden, if he's leading in Hispanic voters, all of a sudden you're broadening that coalition in a way when you add the fervency of those young voters is really, really going to be competitive.
Claire, Medicare for All is still his brand, though. I mean, and I understand this is a Democratic primary, but the Democrats are still putting, to borrow another casino analogy, all their chips on someone whose stated healthcare policy, which in poll after poll is the sort of pocketbook issue that people most likely vote on, more than taxes, more than anything else. He has a position viewed as extreme by independents and declined to state.
Yeah, and remember what Chris Jansen said, that a lot of the Bernie supporters among those culinary workers perhaps were saying that, yeah, they had really good health care with their union, but they see what's going on with union labor, that they're worried about their children. And, you know, so I do think that the kids here, the young people, are weighing even on the older generation as to what is the future of health care. And that's Bernie's point, you know, is that it is really, and by the way, the entrance polls said that 62% of the people who voted in the entrance polls were for Medicare for All. So not the same as the polling we see nationally on Medicare for All.
It's also not a cinch that whatever the coverage would be under Medicare for All would necessarily be worse than what the Culinary Union negotiated. I'm pretty sure that union leaders would be at the table demanding that whatever it is that they've negotiated, whether it's with culinary unions or, you know, steelworkers or whomever who've kind of figured out their health care plans, would ensure that it is at least on par with what they have. So maybe they kind of saw that it wasn't necessarily a loss to vote for Bernie Sanders' plan. The other thing that occurred to me as I'm watching all of this is that Nevada's caucus is kind of a hybrid, you know, because you got the in-person thing and you got the early voting thing. Yeah. This is an object case, I think, for some election reform advocates of the value of something called ranked choice voting. The Nevada early voting system is a system of ranked choice voting. You pick your first, second, third choices, and then they can do this automatically. And everybody kind of does it that way. A number of cities in California, San Francisco, Oakland, Berkeley, San Leandro, which is an Oakland suburb, have done that. Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a bill last year that would have allowed all of California to do ranked choice voting. But this is exactly why Californians like this, because it means you vote one time, everyone votes the exact same way, and then it's over. And no one has to wonder, like, do we have to recount? Do we have two different kinds of ballots? It all kind of goes the same way. There's a voter advocacy group called Fair Vote, which supports ranked choice voting, which said in a release yesterday that only about 0.2% of the early voting ballots were thrown out because someone didn't make enough elections. About 2 to 4% were thrown out because someone forgot to sign it. But other than that, Nevadans seem to know how ranked choice works.
And they seem to like it, is your point?
It would seem to, I mean, look at how many people voted early and didn't bother to show up for the caucus. Now, maybe the people who showed up because they wanted to be able to do some horse trading, they wanted to be able to negotiate, but
I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves.
Claire, is it a good thing for putting the most electable person on the ballot?
I don't know. I know that this is a weird thing to have early voting and then caucus. It seems to me this is like now an afterthought, the caucus thing. And the software is all doing the calculations to figure out who's really viable and who isn't. I think we need to go to a primary process. I'm on the fence about ranked voting, but maybe that's just because I'm not used to it.
A lot of people are.
I do think one of the things the early voting does address is the undemocratic nature of a caucus. It can only happen, in this case, at noon at your caucus site, right? So what if you have a job and it's not in a big casino? What if you have a child? What if you have a soccer game? There's a ton of different things that might prevent you from doing something. I think it's great that they did the early voting, and boy, it added a real hurdle to getting everything tabulated, because you could do this in a place that's not in your precinct.
Exactly. All right, Brian, back to you. We hear you have news.
We do, only in that it's crunch time at a number of these caucuses. We're watching a caucus in Henderson where on the risers inside a high school gym, the horse trading is going on. And we're watching this in East Las Vegas where Garrett Hake is, where the iPad is out there doing the math and making announcements.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, I've done play-by-play on a bunch of things in my career, but this is the first time I've done it on math, and that's what we're seeing here. This is a perfect example of the divide between the early vote and the in-person caucusing happening here. When they aligned for the in-person caucusing in this precinct group, the only group that was viable was Bernie Sanders. There were 13 Sanders supporters. No other candidate here had more than 2 people who showed up in person. But then they added the early vote in, and there were 10 votes for Joe Biden in the early vote. There was only one person here representing Joe Biden on caucus day, but the addition of those 10 people in the early vote made Joe Biden viable in this precinct. So there are a handful of votes for other candidates. Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Tom Steyer each had 1 or 2 votes apiece in the in-person portion of this. Those folks now have to realign or decide if they want to stay uncommitted or stay committed to a candidate who is not viable. They could go to Bernie Sanders. He's got 13 people here all wearing buttons and pins and shirts and a precinct captain. Or they could go with Joe Biden, where there is only one physical person here representing Joe Biden, a single voter who came out today to make his voice heard from Joe Biden, but who is mathematically relevant here by nature of those 10 early votes from this precinct that was cast. And we're going to hear from this site leader here, this precinct chair, who's going to give instructions to these folks now about how to realign if you came to support one of those candidates who are no longer viable.
We're going to go to the second alignment. The two viable groups are going to give 1 minute each to speak on why they should switch sides or why they should switch to another vote. So I will get. You guys want to paper, scissors, rock to go one first? Yes.
Some of those candidates may have 7 or 8. They're not viable, right?
Not viable, no.
But if all these people that are on the lines right now are not viable groups got together in that group, is it possible to form a viable group?
Uncommitted. Uncommitted. Let me double check. Let me see. For me?
So here we go. This is real-time math here, Brian, trying to figure out. You heard the gentleman ask if the folks who had represented other candidates, if all of them had banded together, could they be enough people to form a viable group? I can't see the sheet in front of me exactly on what the threshold number is to be a viable group, but I do not think they would have enough. That would be the supporters of, say, Tom Steyer, Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, and one uncommitted person who showed up here all decided they wanted to go with one of those candidates. It still probably would not be enough based on the early vote, but our site leader's doing the math right now.
As we watch this, Garrett, let's just bring in David Plouffe, and we'll remain in these pictures. David, how is this better than voting?
Well, I think, like you just see, by the way, my understanding, unless the Nevada rules have changed or different than Iowa, is if you're not viable, you're not viable. And people who showed up for you have to choose one of the candidates who were. Listen, I think it makes for great television, but I think in a social media era, everyone's got a phone in their pocket now. Yeah. I just think this may be the last caucus. America, Samoa's got one. We have a couple in some states. But I think it's hard to believe that whether it's 24 or 28, the next time we're doing this for real, it's not all primaries. I think we're going to have all primaries, which are state-run. I just think that, again, there's some benefits to the organizing that goes on in the caucus. But what you see, I agree with Robert Gibbs. The early voting is good. But, either do a primary or do a caucus. Yeah. Don't try and do a hybrid. And I think what we're going to see is primaries in all states, maybe even all territories next time we do this.
We were going to have we heard a hearty listen up, but the caucus leader apparently has headed to the center of the room. And can we go over to the riser in Henderson and see, it looks like they're kind of arranged vertically by candidate, little signs, and people are sitting in the bleachers in the area of we don't have that shot. There it is, upper left, in Henderson, Nevada. They've been getting up and walking across to other areas, kind of horse trading, deciding to stand for candidates other than they came there for. So, yeah, decidedly different tone, but this is the same thing. Cal Perry is our correspondent there, listening there. Cal, what do you have?
Hey, Brian, I'll stay out of the shot. As you sort of described, we're in the second realignment. There was two individuals supporting Joe Biden, and what we saw were those speeches where people were pitching their candidates and trying to get folks to come over. And so those two people have joined other campaigns. They both went to the Amy Klobuchar campaign. And what you're seeing now was, as Garrett Haig described it, math on television, where we're now going through the second alignment. I will jump in and talk about just very briefly what your guests were talking about. Keep in mind, this state was trying to avoid, hang on. Here we go.
Confirm our final alignment by
the final alignment
okay,
results
so the way that this works is we now just put in our early vote participants for a second alignment here. You'll see that we've posted them on the board.
Now what's happening is they are calculating the early voting results with the people who actually came here today. The state wanted to avoid a crush of people coming. Here's the results.
For Pete Buttigieg, there were 22. And for Amy Klobuchar, there were 37, okay, in this realignment. If you haven't already collected the preference cards, we did that. Please stay where you are, and I will come.
Okay, I'll jump back in. So they are merging those early voting numbers with people who came today to give their actual candidate preference cards, which are right here. The state was trying to avoid a crush of people in these gyms. And so what we're seeing here today are fairly empty gyms. Most people did vote early. Certainly in these precincts, we're seeing at about a 2-to-1, maybe a 3-to-1 clip of people who came and voted early, as opposed to those who wanted to caucus. Part of the reason, Brian, as the guests were saying, you got soccer games, you got kids stuff to do. This is taking 2-3 hours. I think Nevada's sort of learning its lesson that in the future, this is probably something they'll want to avoid. But if you're a diehard, if you're in love with democracy and you love the process, you're getting your full today, Brian.
Thank you, Cal Perry. It is a high time we went to Steve Kornacki at the board. Steve, speaking of math, do you have any new numbers?
We do, and by the way, we've been showing you all these entrance poll numbers, and I mentioned at the outset of the broadcast that it was all entrance poll numbers from folks who had early voted. Now we're getting a much more significant number of same-day participants, and there's probably about 20% of what you've gotten here now are same day. One thing we looked at here is that question of sort of pragmatism versus ideology. The question asked of Democratic caucus goers here was, would you rather have that nominee who agrees with you on all of the major issues, or somebody who can beat Trump? Here's the interesting thing. 2/3 of caucus participants chose this one. Beat Trump. 2/3. How did they vote? Check this out. Sanders, again, you're seeing he's leading here. It's a narrow lead, but Sanders gets 23%, almost a quarter. Biden a couple points behind at 19, then Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Warren, whole bunch of candidates all kind of bunched there in the teens, in double digits, with Sanders getting sort of a small plurality there. That's the 2/3 of caucus participants who say, just win, baby, just beat Donald Trump. Now, how about the 1/3 who say they want somebody who agrees with them on the major issues? That is the most important thing for them. Check out what you see here. Again, night and day difference. 1/3 of voters of caucus participants said that. Nearly 60% of them said that Sanders was their choice. Again, Warren barely getting into double digits there. Buttigieg, Biden, Steyer. Sanders running away with the folks here you're seeing who say ideology, agreement on the major issues, that's their major concern. And with a much smaller, much narrower lead among folks who say just beat Trump.
Steve Kornacki, thanks. To our viewers, just a heads up, we have reason to believe we're about to hear from Bernie Sanders because of the numbers they believe they can brag on and talk about at this hour. There's the event. El Paso, Texas. So he would have moved on to El Paso. And Sanders, in addition to his remarks at this rally in Texas, will, we are guessing, address what look to be good numbers for him here. David Plouffe, your impression of what we've just been through.
Well, first of all, a really small place for Bernie Sanders to be today, not just Texas, but El Paso,
right,
where the Latino community in that part of the state, South and West Texas, is going to be so important. So really smart. What is interesting, I think there's a conventional wisdom that people who want to beat Trump, none of them are voting for Sanders. And we see in Nevada, at least, he's winning that as well. The other thing I'd say about electability is when you win, you look like a winner. So the only way I think the other candidates are going to be able to make the case that Bernie Sanders is not electable is, A, be a lot more direct and tough about it, and B, have more evidence that suggests that they'd all beat Trump and Sanders won't. I think the real challenge with Sanders, if he is our nominee, I think he'll be competitive in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I do worry about his ability to put states like Arizona and Florida and North Carolina in place. So if you're the Sanders campaign, I think you want to be able to make a case that you can widen the electoral college map. But that's a number we're going to have to watch really carefully in South Carolina on Super Tuesday, because if Sanders continues to win or is a strong second on electability, it would suggest that his mid-30s, he looks like he's on his way here, is not going to crumble.
Jose Diaz-Balart, our friend and colleague, is standing by. He's here with us in Las Vegas. Jose, pick up on any of the threads you've heard us just touch on, especially communities within the Democratic Party, especially electability.
Great question, Brian. Good afternoon. Yes, look, the fact that in this state 30% of the population is Latino. Senator Sanders is now in El Paso, Texas, a city that is overwhelmingly Latino. We have to see how the Latino vote happens here today. We just got back from a caucus site. I met Morena del Cid. She works in one of the hotels here, and she was telling me that this is her first time she actually participates in the electoral process. She's been here since 1985. She came from El Salvador, became a citizen in 1986, and this is the first time she is participating because she thinks that this is the time when the Latino community has to have their voice heard. I think that we'll be seeing today the results out of the caucuses here in this state, and it could mean a shift as far as the importance of the Latino vote here in Nevada and in other states going forward.
And David Plouffe, a response to Jose.
Well, I think Jose is exactly right. Another point about El Paso, the most important decision a presidential campaign makes is where their candidate spends time. And I think it's very interesting they're in Texas today instead of California, which would suggest to me that they feel pretty good about where things are heading in California. So I think that's really important because I think if they can basically do in Texas what the numbers suggest they might be able to do in California, the delegate haul out of Super Tuesday for Sanders could be pretty astronomical.
We're still watching all these locations, and just a heads up to everybody, Garrett Hake is still in the East Las Vegas Community Center. We've had various announcements, various rounds of caucusing, and we have just been through the period where individuals, perhaps those uncommitted, get lobbied by those who have joined a side. And Garrett, do we have a scorecard yet out of there?
Not yet, Brian. There's still some horse trading going on here, but it was interesting. We heard from a precinct captain from Bernie Sanders who gave a very passionate speech about health care, about why he supports Bernie Sanders. And again, I mentioned earlier, there was only one person originally in this room who was a Joe Biden supporter. His name was a firefighter. Remember the Firefighters Union, which have been staunch supporters of Joe Biden. He came up and gave his speech. Now there's still some discussion going on among some of the folks who are committed to other candidates about whether they want to try to hold out or they want to go to one of these candidates. And I say hold out because this is the wrinkle that we're discovering here in real time. And stay with me if this gets confusing. Basically, if you're realigning in this room, you can see where other people are going. But the early voters, the folks who cast ballots earlier in this week, are also realigned, although they're not here to do it. They cast ballots with preferences, up to 5 candidates in order. So the folks who cast ballots, let's say you voted for Pete Buttigieg, who's not viable here, but you had Amy Klobuchar second. Well, she's also not viable here. Your vote's going to keep going down that scale of your preferences until until it lands with somebody who's viable. You can't see that in this room. That's being calculated in that tool, that iPad calculator, or if it fails, on paper. So it's an imperfect comparison here, and I think that's one of the flaws in this system that will probably be ironed out should they ever try to do this again in Nevada. And I will also add that our viewers today include representatives of these campaigns who are watching this process very closely and occasionally texting reporters to make sure that the math is being done correctly. There is a lot of interest in every single one of these competitive precincts like the one I'm covering right now.
All right, let's listen in here just for a moment.
Two more. 1, 2. 1, 2.
So you added one more to your.
Well, I think this is down to the individual counting of heads now. And again, to repeat the obvious, what differs from voting, well, this differs from voting in so many ways, but standing up in support of your candidate. And especially in smaller communities, all the societal pressure and judgments that may bring for years thereafter. It's different from walking into a voting booth, pulling the lever, drawing the curtain. It's different from a secret ballot vote. Gotti Schwartz is in Reno, where I understand he has secured very valuable props from today's caucus action. Gotti?
Yeah. Very different from the voting booth. Look at what we've got here. There is the 2 and the 3 that decided that delegate tiebreaker. That was for delegates. So Bernie Sanders carried the day there with 7 delegates. But that last delegate, it came down to a statistical tie. So they drew a 2 and a 3. And this was the Bernie Sanders camp, and this was the Buttigieg camp. So Buttigieg got that additional delegate. Here in the gym, this is the last vote from the second realignment from this particular precinct that's going on right now. The big surprise here is that Steyer qualifies alongside Bernie Sanders, who had the most votes, as well as Klobuchar, but noticeably absent Warren, as well as former President or former Vice President Joe Biden, and Buttigieg also viable here. So right now they are tallying up the different delegates to see where those delegates go. That's a lot of math. They're using that iPad over there. They're also tabulating with the good old score sheet that everybody can see. They're trying to be transparent as possible, they say, and that means a lot of people gathering around as they do math in real time. We should have the results from those delegates pretty soon here. Brian, back to you.
All right, Gotti Schwartz, nice going there. And though maybe those delegates are going to want those cards back, they don't need to know. Yeah.
Yeah, and a quick update. I talked to the woman that drew the 3. It sounds like she had a very rough night at the casino last night. They were at the blackjack tables, did not go well. So this was a very nice consolation prize for them.
At least once during your stay here in Las Vegas, it occurs to you how they keep all the lights on and how they keep the doors open and why everything looks so good. They have a lot of income
House always wins.
Along the strip. Yeah. Thank you, Gotti Schwartz. And back to Jose Diaz-Balart. Jose, so much of this attention in the last few days, and certainly coming out of Las Vegas, is going to be focused on Bernie Sanders. And as we were saying, all the subgroups by age, by which community you identify with in this country. And as David Plouffe said earlier, the big question will be the emergence, if it happens, of a viable challenger to Sanders. And by Super Tuesday, we're going to have some big numbers stacked up.
Absolutely. I mean, seems like there's just not a lot of time left, even though, the elections aren't till the 3rd of November, but it looks like there's little time left, and yet we just kind of started this process, right? I just wanted to say something that, Gotti mentioned about keeping the lights on here. The men and women who work in these hotels that I had the pleasure of being with today, there's so many people from around the world, Latinos mostly, that I found, that are the ones that work here and that contribute to this economy and to this country and feel very much a part of this country. And yet, for a lot of them, they haven't really participated in the electoral system. It's really good, and it's really kind of heartening to see them step forward and say, this is the first time I am participating because of the time we're living in, because times are so critical. And people, just a thought I had, I mean, this state has more mixed status families living here than any other place in the United States. Mixed status means some are citizens of the United States and they live with someone who doesn't have documents, or is a resident, or doesn't have any document, or just arrived with or without documents. And a lot of the issues that people are worried about, they feel now, for the first time, that they need to vote, speak out, and say, we're here, and what we care about needs to be heard, And I think that the subdivision of our country, sometimes I feel as though, we live in different countries, Latinos in one and non-Latinos in the other, but really it boils down to all of us, I think, participating and deciding that we have to make a difference, and we can only do so by participating. And it's, again, really heartening to see, Brian, people who are telling me that for the first time they're coming to vote, and they've been citizens since 1985,
Right down from us here on the Las Vegas Strip, Jose Diaz-Balart, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it very much. Another break in our coverage. When we come back, we will hear from James Carville, standing by to talk to us about the party that is caucusing today here in Nevada, creating all those numbers, all those pieces of paper, powering all those iPads, and maybe, just maybe, we'll know a result when it's all over.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with the need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
I am totally blind, and Non-24 can throw my days and nights out of sync, keeping me from the things I love to do. Talk to your doctor and call 844-214-2424.
When fingertips, knuckles, and cuticles get cracked, you need relief that gets right to the point. Gold Bond Cracked Skin Relief, designed to precisely fill cracks, instantly soothe. 94% saw noticeable improvement. Gold Bond Cracked Skin Relief.
Well, here's to first dates. You look amazing.
And you look amazingly comfortable.
When your V-neck looks more like a U-neck, that's when you know it's half washed. Try Downy Fabric Conditioner. Unlike detergent alone, Downy helps prevent stretching by conditioning and smoothing fibers. So clothes look newer, longer. Downy, and it's done.
I'm your 70-pound St. Bernard puppy, and my lack of impulse control is about to become your problem.
No, come on. I saw you eating poop earlier.
My focus is on the road, and that's saving me cash with DriveWise.
Focus!
Let's face it, this isn't Sling TV. With so many on-demand movies, shows, there's a lot more exciting stuff to watch at home. Let's ditch this kung fu.
Get the #1 live TV streaming service for less at Sling.com.
I used to be a little cranky. Dealing with our finances really haunted me. Thankfully, I've got QuickBooks, and the live bookkeeper is helping customize it for our business.
You're all set up.
Great!
Get set up right with a live bookkeeper with Intuit QuickBooks.
At Bissell, we love pets. We also love a challenge. The Bissell Pro Heat 2X Revolution Pet Pro is the best deep cleaning system for pet messes. Dual dirt lifter power brushes clean deep down into carpet fibers. Our Clean Shot pre-treater blasts pet accidents. And our Max Clean mode tackles the toughest, largest stains. You'll be amazed at what comes out of your carpet. So you love the pets, we'll worry about the messes.
Going camping?
No, I'm going off the grid. I just can't handle having my life dictated by my credit score.
You do know about Credit Sesame, right?
That sounds like just another free credit score thing.
Credit Sesame is so much more than a free credit score. Credit Sesame gives you the power to take control of your credit. And just think about all you can do with great credit.
So I don't have to drop off the grid. Don't touch that!
Download Credit Sesame for free today.
We eat to live, but food is so much more than that. It's actually baked into our culture and our politics. I'm Andrew Zimmer. I'm exploring our country, looking at the biggest social and political questions of the day through the lens of food. From fields to fisheries, our climate is in crisis.
Climate change is becoming something we can taste.
How is the climate crisis affecting the food we eat? Find out on the next What's Eating America.
We are back with our live coverage of the Nevada Caucuses 2020, and we're going to go to Henderson, Nevada, one of the many places that bears the name of Del Webb, the prolific real estate developer around these parts. It's a school where Cal Perry has been watching this caucus. Cal?
Hey, so we're at precinct 1520 here in the area of Henderson. And here there's only 10 people, right? Early voting came and people voted and it went well, but now it's not going so well. They're trying to calculate the votes. We can show you, why don't we just, Dana, just show the tally sheet. What happened was only 10 people in this precinct came out to do the caucus today. And there was some confusion about whether or not people needed to realign, whether or not that was something that needed to happen. Add to that complication the misunderstanding of whether or not people needed to realign. Some folks left. Did you want to talk to us, sir? Are you busy?
No,
you sure?
Yes.
All right. People here are upset about the way that it's gone. Some people want to change their vote. There was some confusion earlier. This is part of the problem with the caucus system. Ma'am, did you want to say anything? I'm desperate to get somebody. Do you know what happened here?
I think it's very confusing because they didn't know what to do on their second vote, on their second choice. And it's confusing because for the people that voted early, they don't know what their second choice was. So when two candidates weren't viable, the other people weren't able to understand if they would become viable because of the early voters. Does that make sense?
We don't know what the early vote was on the second round.
Okay. And so now are people having to change their votes, or are you recalculating? How does that work?
We're recalculating.
Recalculating. Okay. Thank you very much. Do you think we should still be doing this in 2020?
No, I think I've now been at the Des Moines caucus and here, and it's an antiquated system. It's not fair, and it needs to stop.
Okay, so there you have it from the first in the West. No more caucusing, Brian.
Wow. Okay, you forgot to ask her who she was for. Just kidding. That was an earring joke.
I know.
Let's go to Alicia Menendez. Rancho High School also covering one of these caucuses. Alicia?
All right, Brian, I have two different precincts wrapping their caucuses over my shoulder. So this one over here, they've actually done their delegate math. Bernie Sanders. Translated in English for him, talking about the importance of healthcare, immigration, and rights for all. The final thing we're seeing here is a lot of what you're seeing across the state, which is these votes came from early votes. Brian?
Alicia, thank you. If there's a man of the hour at this hour, it's that man. Here's Bernie Sanders in El Paso.
The next First Lady of the United States, people here. And there are a lot of people outside who couldn't get inside. So thank you all very much for coming. Let me thank Sparta for their music. Let me thank David Stout for his remarks. Let me thank Sabia Diatzlan for her remarks. Alexandra Emilio, Marissa Marquez, and let me thank Jim Hightower, a friend of 30 years. Jim, thank you for all that you do. When I look out at an audience like this, and I see the diversity and the beauty in this audience. And let me tell you, you do look beautiful from here. When I look out at this audience, I have absolute confidence that we can create a government that is based on compassion, is based on love, is based on truth, not what we have now of greed, corruption, and lies. All of you know that we have a president today who is a pathological liar, who is running a corrupt administration, who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. And he thinks that he is going to win election by dividing this country up based on the color of our skin or where we were born. But we have news for Trump. Love and compassion and bringing people together is a lot more powerful than divisiveness. The message of our campaign, as I think all of you know, is us, not me. And that is about two very important, two profound points. First of all, Trump and his friends believe that the function of human life is to lie and cheat and step on people in order to make as much money as you possibly can. We have a different vision of what human life is about. We know that we are better and stronger and more human when we reach out with compassion, when we understand that we are in this together, that every family here, every family in America has its problems, and that we are strong when we stand together, when my family cares about your family, when your family cares about my family. That is the kind of America we are going to be. And we're going to win this election because the American people understand that there is something profoundly wrong in the richest country in the history of the world when we have more income and wealth inequality today than at any time in the last 100 years. It is not acceptable to working people in this country that 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. It is not acceptable that tens of millions of people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to take care of their families. It's not acceptable that half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Right. It is not acceptable that we are living in a society where so few have so much and so many have so little. Today, we got 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets of America. Today, we have 18 million families paying 50% of their limited incomes for housing. Today, we have hundreds of thousands of bright young people who cannot afford to get a higher education. Today, we have 45 million people paying a student debt that many of them cannot afford to pay. So what our campaign is about and what our administration will be about is rethinking America, understanding that all of our people, when I say all, I also mean the undocumented in this country. That all of our people are entitled to basic human rights. That if you work 40 hours a week in America, you should not earn starvation wages. I have talked to too many people in Texas and all over this country. Yeah, they got a job, but they got a job that is paying them a wage which is unlivable. And that is why we're going to raise the minimum wage in this country to at least $15 an hour. And that is why we believe that it is absurd that women in America make 80 cents on the dollar compared to men, and minority women, Latino, African-American women, make even less. And that is why we are going to establish equal pay for equal work. That is why when millions of workers all across this country want to join a union, because they understand that when you're in a union, you can negotiate decent wages and decent benefits. Thank you, National Nurses Union. We're going to make it easier for workers to get into unions, get decent wages and decent benefits. All of you know that our infrastructure, that is our roads, our bridges, our water systems, our wastewater plants, are crumbling. You all know that we have a major crisis in affordable housing, in homelessness. We are going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, build 10 million units of affordable low-income housing, put millions of workers to work at good-paying union jobs. And when we look at this country, we understand that education is enormously important. And we understand that if this country is going to do well for all, we need to have the best public education system in the world. And that means universal, high-quality child care. It means tripling funding for low-income Title I schools so that all of our kids, regardless of the color of their skin or the language they speak, regardless of the zip code they live in, get the kind of education that they need. And we believe, if we believe in education, which we do, it means we believe in educators, teachers. I hope very much that many of the young people who are here will give consideration to becoming a teacher. We desperately need great teachers in America. We need more Latino teachers, more African American teachers. We need more teachers. And because we believe in the importance of the work that teachers are doing, we're going to fight to make sure that no teacher in America earns less than $60,000. Because we believe in educational opportunity for all, we're going to make public colleges and universities and trade schools tuition free. that the United States Congress, against my vote, voted to bail out the crooks on Wall Street who nearly destroyed the economy. 2 years ago, Trump and his friends gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and large profitable corporations. Well, I believe that if Trump can give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and large corporations, we can cancel all student debt in America. The United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, is the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people. Together, we are going to end that embarrassment. And I want you all to understand, the media sometimes misses this. The idea of universal health care is not a radical idea. I live in Burlington, Vermont. Come on up and visit us sometime. 50 miles away from where I live in Canada, everybody goes to any doctor they want. You don't have to take out your wallet or your credit card. If you get sick and you end up in a hospital for a month, you come out of that hospital without owing one nickel. That's not just Canada. It's the UK, it's France, it's Germany, it's Sweden, it's Denmark, it's countries all over the world. They understand what you understand, what I understand. Healthcare is a human right, not a privilege. And I want to thank the National Nurses United Union. These are the nurses who are on the front line of healthcare. They're taking care of all of us every single day. They know how dysfunctional, how cruel the current system is. Thank you, nurses, for all you're doing. Now, you're going to see a lot on television that Bernie's ideas are too radical, can't be done. So let me take a minute to explain what Medicare for All means, what the nurses have been fighting for, what the American Academy of Physicians is fighting for, what I'm fighting for, what many of you are fighting for. This is what it means. It means no more premiums for workers or their employers. Premiums gone. It means no more co-payments when you walk into a doctor's office. Gone. It means we end the insane concept of deductibles. So millions of people have health insurance, but they still can't go to the doctor if they got a $5,000 deductible. Medicare for All means we end all out-of-pocket expenses. And because we are going to take on the greed and the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, an industry that charges our people sometimes 10 times more for the same exact drug sold in Mexico or in Canada. Under our administration, that thievery is going to stop. And nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs. Now, right now, everybody hears, we are spending twice as much per person on health care as the people of any other country. It's not that we're not spending enough money. We're spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. And yet, despite that huge expenditure, we have 87 million people uninsured or underinsured. We got at least, and I think the number is higher, at least 30,000 people who die every single year. Because by the time they walk into the doctor's office, because they're uninsured, their situation is terminal. We have 500,000 people in America who go bankrupt because of medically related bills. Think about it for a second. Think about somebody who is struggling with cancer or heart disease or Alzheimer's. What a struggle it is to get well. And yet, on top of all of that, they got to worry that their family is going bankrupt. In America, you should not suffer financial ruin because you got sick. So today it is inhumane. That's exactly what it is. It is cruel and inhumane. So today we say to the drug companies and the insurance companies who made $100 billion in profits last year, we say to them that the function of a humane healthcare system is to guarantee healthcare to all, not to make the drug companies and the insurance companies rich. Donald Trump embarrasses us every single day. But in one area, he is embarrassing and hurting not only the American people, but people all over the world. Donald Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax.
We interrupt Bernie Sanders, who, by the way, is having a moment, not his first, and certainly will not be his last this cycle, but that campaign has every reason to believe they have had a big day here in Nevada. Steve Kornacki, though, begs the question, it's getting late. Do we have numbers?
We do not. We have the entrance polls we've been talking about. The entrance polls are painting a very vivid picture. This is what the actual vote looks like in Nevada right now. This is what the actual returns look like. Remember, this is not a state-run election. This is run by the Nevada State Democratic Party. We are at their mercy in terms of getting official, actual results. I can tell you, looking at my clock here on the East Coast, it is 4:54 p.m. right now, 1:54 p.m. out where you are, Brian, roughly at this same point in 2016, at 5 p.m. on the East Coast in 2016. This number said 54%. We had 54% tallied and reported out in 2016. At basically this point, there is zero right now. Now, of course, I want to say, we're all remembering Iowa. We are all wondering. I know that's on everybody's mind out there. This is, as you've been hearing these last few hours, a different procedure that's being used this year by the Nevada Democratic Party, as it was in Iowa. They're trying to report out 3 different sets of numbers. They're trying to merge 75,000 early votes with all of that same-day activity we've been tracking. So there's a lot more to be done to get results out. So this delay, it could be all just chalked up to something reasonable having to do with that. But I would simply point out, we all remember Iowa. We all remember that nightmare. We are 2 hours along. This is very different than 2016 at this point, so we will see.
Indeed, right now we are all Iowa. Even though we are here in Nevada, we must take a break. When we come back, we're going to ask some questions about this process and this campaign thus far of one James Carville.
You work hard for your money. Stretch days for it. Or juggled life for it. Took charge for it. So care for it. Look after it. Invest with the expertise of JP Morgan, either with an advisor or online through Chase. After all, it's yours. Chase, make more of what's yours.
If you're living with HIV, keep being you and ask your doctor about Biktarvy.
Biktarvy is a complete one-pill, once-a-day treatment used for HIV in certain adults. It's not a cure, but with one small pill, Biktarvy fights HIV to help you get to and stay undetectable. That's when the amount of virus is so low it can't be measured by a lab test. The research shows people who take HIV treatment every day and get to and stay undetectable can no longer transmit HIV through sex. Serious side effects can occur, including kidney problems and kidney failure. Rare, life-threatening side effects include a buildup of lactic acid and liver problems. Do not take Biktarvy if you take dofetilide or rifampin. Tell your doctor about all the medicines and supplements you take if you are pregnant or breastfeeding, or if you have kidney or liver problems, including hepatitis. If you have hepatitis B, do not stop taking Biktarvy without talking to your doctor. Common side effects were diarrhea, nausea, and headache.
If you're living with HIV, keep loving who you are and ask your doctor if Biktarvy is right for you.
It's time for the ultimate Sleep Number event on the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It's the final days to save 50% on the Sleep Number 360 limited edition Smart Bed, plus 0% interest for 24 months and Sunday.
There are plenty of road closures you're going to want to know about if you're planning to hit the slopes today. Well, we're just getting word from the highway. There's just no movement at all down there.
Above and beyond.
Different folks have different strokes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, get it, baby.
It's endless sirloin and seafood at Golden Corral.
Different moves for different grooves.
Golden Corral, the only one for everyone.
Cover it up. That's what I did when I started losing my hair. Then I realized I could actually do something. Now I use Keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1 a day, which means no more covering up. Get started at Keeps.com.
When it's time to sell your home, there's a lot of money on the line. How can you trust your real estate agent will get it right? There's good news. With HomeLight, you can compare actual performance data on thousands of agents near you, so you know who sells quickly, who sells for the best price. We'll match you with the perfect agent for your needs. And best of all, it's free. Sell your home for more money. Go to HomeLight.com today.
Plastic. It's our most dangerous addiction. So we took our worst vice and turned it into the DNA for a better system. We created Bionic and put the word out with GoDaddy. What will you change? Make the world you want.
The Nevada Caucuses 2020, as you look at the famous Las Vegas Strip, a day that started with rainfall and hopefully will end better than that. It is coming up on just seconds away from 5 o'clock Eastern Time. As we established before the break, we have no numbers to tell you from the Nevada Caucus. As Steve Kornacki has been careful to point out, we have, when we have presidential elections, we have 50 state elections. This is not one of those. This is a state party. This is the Democratic Party. Remember, the president running here unopposed, so we don't have an exact opposite on the Republican side. We are fortunate to be able to talk to James Carville, who, going back to the Roosevelt era, was the last Democratic strategist to have flipped the party in power in the White House, I am reminded, James. Your loyalty to the Democratic Party, second only to that of the Marine Corps and LSU. Right. So, James, here's a rhetorical question. When was the last time you walked in to vote and they said, actually, I need your first, second, and third choices, and once you decide, can you go stand there publicly with your neighbors and physically make a choice for who to support? That is my way of asking, James, what should happen to the caucus system?
Look, we can see what's going to happen here. But to people like David Plouffe and myself, there's one screaming story here tonight, and we've seen enough, and that is we now have a front runner. The tenor of this race has now changed. So you're going to see these candidates go forward in a debate in South Carolina. We're not going to be talking about 3 non-disclosure agreements and Michael Bloomberg or any such thing. There is a clear defined front runner. I don't. Who knows when they're going to count the votes, or the caucus goers, or the ranked choice, or whatever. You know, I'm here at the public TV station New Orleans, in Endymion, which is this marvelous Mardi Gras parade. Starts about 350 yards from here. They got a gazillion floats. They're able to organize that, to put it together, to roll out on time, to do everything. If the DNC was running a carnival parade, we'd never get out of the chute. But we can't worry about that. It's obvious that Senator Sanders is going to do very well tonight. It's obvious that he's the front runner. It's obvious these other candidates have not sufficiently talked about him. It's obvious that he's never been vetted in the press. I've not seen the four-part series in the New York Times or the Washington Post or NBC News or anything else. So we're in a whole new ballgame here, and this game could end a little after mid-March. And some of these candidates are going to have to make really hard decisions about who stays in and who gets out and where we go from here. So, Brian, I just think there's one big, huge, screaming story here tonight, and that is there is a front runner in the 2020 Democratic presidential race.
All right, don't change anything. Don't go anywhere. Don't have another thought that we don't get the benefit of hearing. Steve Kornacki apparently, and I hope you're seated, James, has actual numbers from today's voting in Nevada. Steve, it looks like colors on the whiteboard.
We have some. Let me show you. This is the first round of voting. Remember, 3 different sets of numbers will be reported out here. The initial preference, that's what you're seeing here. Statewide total, this is very early. What this reflects, this is 35 precincts from Clark County. That's the Las Vegas Valley, basically. And this is 18 precincts from Washoe County. That's Reno, that's Sparks, that part of the state. The lion's share of the vote is going to come from these 2 counties. This is just a slim portion of that. But you see here Sanders on the first preference from these precincts, a bit more than 50 precincts being reported out here. Sanders on the first preference, leading this 33-18 for Biden, 15 for Buttigieg and Warren. Klobuchar back at 10. I believe we also have the realignment numbers. Remember, all these precincts, the candidates who don't make the threshold, their supporters become free agents. This is what happens. 33-18 becomes 40-21. So you see Sanders going up there, gaining in that realignment, gaining more than Joe Biden gained. I think that's something we were not seeing out in Iowa between Sanders and Buttigieg. So Sanders 40-21 on the realignment. I do not believe we have, and I'm just checking this, yes, this would be the final number, because remember, these caucus results, what actually affects the national delegates is the statewide tally of all of the county delegates. Very complicated formula. We don't have that. The reason is what you're seeing here with these numbers. I'll put them back up on the screen. What you're seeing with these numbers here, and just seeing if anything new comes in, these are being reported by folks we have out in the field. Folks who are at these precinct locations in Washoe County, in Clark County, writing down what happens, getting that to us so we can start a tally of our own from these precincts. We're not getting these. I want to be clear. We're not getting these from the state party. We are still waiting on results to come in from the state party, which officially runs this. And in fact, I'm just checking here to make sure, well, I've been talking, nothing has come in from the state party. The answer is nothing still from the state party. So what we're able to show you right now from the 2 giant counties here that basically make up the vast majority of the vote in Nevada, we're able to show you about 50 precincts there total, and that's what it looks like on the first preference and on the reallocation, and hopefully we will have more to show you soon.
Steve Kornacki, thank you. We resume our conversation with James Carville. First of all, James, I am more than familiar with the very formidable guys at Endymion down the street, so thank you for that mention. Secondly, go back. You just made the point very clearly that this race has, on the Democratic side, a clearly defined front runner. That front runner is Bernie Sanders. Ergo,
Correct.
what should that mean? What happens now?
Well, we're going to see a complete change in tenor on Monday night. If we don't, then our field is really dumb. I mean, Bernie Sanders is the issue. Anytime you become the front runner, I remember when we were the front runner in '92, we got all the heat. As we should. The New York Times wrote a Whitewater story to get a single fact right, but at least they tried to cobble something together like they had a role to play in this. And we're plunging ahead. Meanwhile, the ABC Washington Post poll comes out. Buttigieg is plus 17 against Trump with college-educated women, and Sanders is at 2. these are the kinds of facts that people have to be presented with. We've got to, and I see that 2/3 of the Nevada caucus goers really want to win the election. I don't know if us in the media are sufficiently telling people what are the risks that you're running by doing this. I think voters need to really be appraised of what's going on here. Hopefully these candidates have the skill and are able to do this. We got a week to go before South Carolina, and then 48 hours later, you had Super Tuesday, and things are going to be happening furious and fast. And we got to gear up for an entirely different race than what you've seen before. The tenor it has changed in this race. The ground has shifted. Strategic imperatives are now different. We're entering a different time, and it's a very compressed and short time that we're in this time frame. So people had better get real. These campaigns better stay up late. They better be thinking about how they're going to put forward what they're about, how they're going to deal with the debate, how they're going to allocate scarce media resources. And some people are just not going to make it for very long, and that's just the nature of presidential politics. So we got a lot of news here coming up next week. I promise you, a lot.
James, you just mentioned the risk. Define risk in your view, and talk about down ballot races under a Sanders nominee.
Right. Well, first of all, I won't mention names, but I get any number of calls from panicked congressional incumbents. I know what's happening out there. I got a real good idea. The entire theory that by expanding the electorate, increasing turnouts, you can win an election is the equivalent of climate denying. All right? When people say that, they're as stupid to a political scientist as a climate denier is to an atmospheric scientist. So whatever you do, if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders because you feel good about his program, because you don't like the banks on Wall Street, or you don't like pharmaceuticals, that's completely legitimate. I understand that. If you're voting for him because you think he'll win the election, because he'll galvanize heretofore sleepy parts of the electorate, then politically you're a fool. And that's just a fact. It's no denying it. There's so much political science, there's so much research on this that it's not even a debatable question. And if people are praised to this and they know that and they want to do it as Democrats, that's their own business. But I don't think that they have all of the facts that they need before they make this judgment going forward.
James Carville's Nicole Wallace. You're describing what sounds a lot like political suicide, and I think we need a psychologist to understand that. I want to understand what the psychology could be behind the Bernie alternative's rise. I mean, this would seem like hitting the bottom is the way most people begin to recover. I mean, this would be this victory that looks imminent in Nevada for Bernie. If there's going to be a wake-up call, maybe this would be it, if that's the way it heads. Is there any sort of gathering place? Is there any sort of way to galvanize the non-Bernie vote around today's result?
I don't know. And, of course, in 1983, the British Labour Party, which has to be one of the truly stupid parties in the entire world, of course, Bernie Sanders loves, penned what was called after the election, I think Michael Foote was the candidate, the longest suicide note in history. They put out like a 60-page plan. I don't know. But I just don't think that we have, thought this out. I think the other candidates and other campaigns, and I understand they're attacking each other, we got to make the choices that Democrats have to make going forward as they approach this. We got to win this. If you don't win the Senate back, you don't get anything. Even if you're stupid theory and you get 280 electoral votes, and let's say Nancy Pelosi and we have such skilled incumbents in the House that we're able to hang on to the House majority, nothing is going to change. You're just going to go down the same road again. If you don't push yourself to be a majoritarian party, to take advantage of an election where you have 55% of the votes available to you, then you're making a real mistake in my opinion. And all that I can do and have a voice is tell people this is the choice. You choose what side you want, but be sure that you're as informed as you can be on the choice you make. And I think that's really what it's about.
James, you and Mary live outside of the media hubs. As mother of an 8-year-old, I interact with a lot of people outside my media life. Is part of the blame that the media shoulders in this is that we respond to the squeaky wheels? I learned everything I knew as a press person from watching the War Room and from studying the Clinton campaign. But the Sanders campaign and the Trump campaign, they've taken these things to dark arts of abusing the press, of bullying the press. I mean, what do we miss in terms of paying attention to a squeaky, angry minority and ignoring the majority?
Right. I don't know. And everybody complains to me in the media and the press. I said, I don't know how to tell you this. The press has not near as much power as they had when I was young. Remember, Lyndon Johnson said, "If I lost the war because I lost Walter Cronkite."
Yeah.
I mean, if you lose Wolf Blitzer, you're not going to lose anything. I mean, that's just the way America. And I don't mean to pick on Wolf. I like him. I would say the same thing about any of our hosts on my own network right now. It just had this diffusion of media power and media authority, and you're right. Trump and Bernie Sanders are able to. And by the way, the happiest person right now, it's about 1:15 Moscow time. This thing is going very well for Vladimir Putin. I promise you. He's probably staying up watching us right now. How you doing, Vlad?
That's absolutely right. And James, there's reporting that that's exactly what the intelligence agencies think is going on. I mean, the Sanders campaign was briefed that Putin is helping him or plans to help him in the primary. Amazing.
And I don't think Sanders wants Putin to help. The only reason, why would Vladimir Putin be helping Bernie Sanders? Of course, because he wants Donald Trump to win. I mean, it's a straight line, and I don't think that the Sanders campaign in any way is collusion or collaboration. I think they don't like this story, but the story is a fact. And the reason that the story is a fact is Putin is doing everything that he can to help Trump, including trying to get Bernie Sanders the Democratic nomination. If you remember when Bernie ran in 2016, his chief strategist was Paul Manafort's sidekick in the Ukraine. I mean, this thing just didn't start right now. And it's something that people need to know about. They need to be made aware of it. The candidates on the debate stage in South Carolina on Monday night need to quit attacking each other and start talking about where this country is and how do you push it forward under some real choices that Democrats have to make.
My question for you, James.
James, one more for me out in Vegas.
Sure.
And that is, if I gave you a ballroom with all the candidates on the Democratic side, not named Bernie, and what happened in that ballroom stayed in that ballroom, what would you say to them gathered together the day after the Nevada caucuses?
I just say we got to win. Without any, right now, I think the country is at such peril, and I think that people do want to win. I think that they need someone that is able to intelligently frame the issue and frame the choices that they have to make. I think if that happens, I still, in my heart of hearts, believe that we can have a big year. But I have to tell you, the hour is getting late, and I keep waiting for something like this to happen, and I haven't had it yet. But hopefully I'll see it here in the next couple of 3 weeks. I have to stay optimistic. It's all I can do.
James, it's Claire. I just want.
Claire.
I have a request for you. Could you call Tom Steyer?
Anything you want. You don't have no request to me. I'm at your command. I love you.
I want you to call Tom Steyer and tell him how the cow ate the cabbage. I want you to call him and tell him to take all those millions of dollars that he has spent in Nevada to get nothing, and all the millions he spent in South Carolina, and all the few votes he's getting, he needs to be spending that money making sure voters understand the choices they have in this primary between now and the end of March.
Yeah,
Will you call him?
You know, I'll call him, but he's a guy, I know him, he'll make up his own mind, but I think Tom Steyer's the kind of guy, when he sees what he's doing is counterproductive, he'll change strategies. But, you know, it's hard when you get in these races. You get competitive. You want to stay in. You fought so hard. And, you know, a lot of people, and I would include a lot of Democrats, and they're going to have to make some hard choices moving forward here. And they're probably going to come. They'll start coming next Saturday in South Carolina. Maybe some will come before this. A lot of these candidates just not going to be raising any money, and they can't sustain this. It's a hard slog out there right now.
James Carville, on behalf of my colleagues Claire McCaskill and Nicole Wallace in New York, thank you for taking our questions.
one thing is great about Senator McCaskill and Nicole. Both of them know politics. Both of them know what it's like. They've been there, and that's what I like about our coverage sometimes, is we got people that have actually, like, breathed the air of what a campaign is like and what they're going through. And you know, sometimes in life that's important. That helps something, that you've actually had to sit down on election night scared out of your mind, which I know both of you have been.
They're after you. They're after you.
Exactly. Thanks,
some political hacks, all you hacks out there, I gotta love y'all all.
Say hey to Endymion for me. Thank you, James Carville,
thank you, man.
the great city of New Orleans and the great state of Louisiana. Steve Kornacki, nation turns its lonely eyes to you. Are there any more numbers out of the state?
There are some more numbers, and I want to explain to folks it's very complicated and tricky what is, and I think significantly, what isn't happening here with these numbers. So let me show you. These are the official final numbers. These are all zeros right now. When you get to who won the state, how many national convention delegates, this is the formula that sort of produces those numbers. This is calculated by the state party. This is released by the state party. This is at zero because the state Democratic Party at this point, 5:15 on the East Coast, still has not reported out results from any precincts. I can tell you at this point in 2016, the state Democratic Party had reported out 2/3 of the precincts, 2/3 of the results. So they are significantly behind that. Again, doing it differently this time with what's ultimately going to be released, supposedly, but zero from the state party. Now, what we do have are spotters from news organizations that have been at these voting locations across the state writing down. You've seen from our reporters these results get announced. They've been writing them down at some locations across the state. What they've been able to record is not this official final number. They've been able to record that first preference. So that's what this is. I'll show you that right now. This is where we have 4% or so covered with the first preference. They've been able to record that, and they've been able to record the reallocated preference at these locations, you know, when the candidates don't make the viability threshold. So let me put in perspective what we, without anything from the state party, are and aren't capable of doing here. This is the missing vote. You see, the bulk of it's going to come out of the Las Vegas area. The bulk of it's going to come out of Washoe. Not much else, not a lot of population in the rest of the state. So you see 84 precincts. Right now, we've had spotters at 84 precincts. Of the nearly 2,100 that are out there in Nevada, we've had spotters who are able to give us results. Now, hopefully, if all goes right with our spotters, we'll be able to get you about 300. So about 300 of 2,100, we can cover the first and second preference, about 1 out of 7 precincts across the state. That is obviously limited. We are at the mercy of the state Democratic Party of Nevada for more than that. So we can give you what we've gotten. 88 of these 2,100. We saw just a little bit got added right there. You're seeing from those, you see Sanders here on the first preference, basically a 2-to-1 advantage over Biden. You got Buttigieg, you got Warren, Klobuchar, Steyer back here. I think the interesting thing here is what happens with these candidates, Klobuchar and Steyer in particular, who are getting some support but falling short of that 15% threshold. Watch what happens on the reallocation, because we have the numbers for those, and you see Klobuchar drops down to 7, Steyer drops down to 4. You even see Warren there at 13. And look what happens, where that vote goes up at the top. Suddenly Bernie Sanders goes from 33, I was going to say 40, we got a little bit more in there, now to 39%. So Sanders, remember, we weren't necessarily seeing this in Iowa. In Iowa, Sanders was leading on the first preference and leading on the reallocation, but by a much smaller margin. We're actually seeing Sanders expand his margin as those voters, Klobuchar, a lot from Steyer there, perhaps some from Warren, reallocate on the second preference. So that's what we got for you, 88 precincts around the state where we can show you the first preference. I'm just seeing if anything was added there. We can show you the first preference. We can show you the second preference. Most of these precincts that we're able to report to you, they are from Washoe and Clark County. That's where most of the vote's going to come from.
Wow. On behalf of all the viewers watching this coverage, you're allowed to look at it and wonder who won and why it isn't simpler to answer that question. Our thanks to Steve for wading through what we have, some of it observation from our old folks, our own folks. So we're going to take a break. So many questions for Chris Matthews. So many questions for Jen Palmieri. When Carville talks about people who've been in the room, who have breathed that air, she did as recently as the last cycle. Our coverage continues right after this.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can get. At Liberty Butchamug.
Cut.
Liberty Bibbity.
Cut. We'll dub it.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Look who's got Smart Pack.
Smart Pack?
Just hit the clicker. Car packs itself.
Hey, you can pack there.
He's got Smart Pack!
Oh, it's Big Poppy.
Did you guys know he lived there?
I had no idea.
The all-new Sonata with remote smart parking assist.
In August 1619, a ship appeared on this horizon near Point Comfort, Virginia. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. No aspect of the country we know today has been untouched by the slavery that followed. America was not yet America, but this was the moment it began.
It's time for the ultimate Sleep Number event on the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It's the final days to save 50% on the Sleep Number 360 limited edition Smart Bed, plus 0% interest for 24 months and Sunday.
Hush, little Heidi, don't you cry. Duluth Trading made you new underwear. They're called dang soft, they're like a cloud, or maybe like a plushy snout. A pillow for your package, spread the word. Like a cuddly panda, hug your gird. Duluth Trading dang soft underwear. Lull your loins. Only at Duluth stores and DuluthTrading.com.
It only takes a second for an everyday item to become dangerous. Tide Pod's Child Guard Pack helps keep your laundry packs in a safe place and your child safer. Align, press, and unzip. Tide Pods. Keep them up, keep them closed, keep them safe.
Hello, I'm William Shatner, and you may not know this about me, but years ago, I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder. And like millions of others, I was prescribed sleep equipment. Did you know sleep equipment manufacturers recommend daily cleaning? That's why I use So Clean. So Clean is fast and easy. It keeps my sleep equipment fresh every day without the need for disassembly.
With So Clean, daily maintenance is a snap. All you do is place your equipment in, close the lid, and walk away. That's it. You can try So Clean risk-free for 30 nights. Even shipping is free.
So Clean is so fast and gives you peace of mind that your sleep equipment is fresh each time you use it.
Call 1-800-493-3709 or go to SoClean.com to take advantage of this risk-free trial. Call 1-800-493-3709 now. So fast, so easy, So Clean.
It's not neat, it's not tidy, it's not really understandable. But that is what we have right now that passes for results in the ongoing Nevada Democratic Caucus from 252 caucus sites throughout this state. We got a bunch of people itching to get in on this conversation. First and foremost, Chris Matthews, I know you as a romantic about American politics and the American political experience. I happen to know Joy Reid is with you. Ditto. She is a romantic about the American political experience. I am guessing you are both by now hardcore realists that we're looking at a category that says reallocated preference. The first category is what most people define as voting. What is going on here, and is this any way to pick a nominee?
Well, I don't think so, but it is the way we're picking this one, and it looks like Bernie Sanders is hard to beat right now. I'm with Carville all the way in terms of the dangers of what lurks what lies ahead in November. I'm very much aware of them. They're sitting on so much Oppo research on Bernie, what he said in the past about world affairs, how far left he is. I'm not sure how far left he is, but they're going to make the most of that in terms of world politics. They're going to kill him. But I think it's a little late to stop him, and I think that's the problem. By the way, if you look at the pattern, it's dynamic. Bernie won the popular vote in Iowa. He won it again in New Hampshire. It looks like he's going to win it here when they finally get a vote. Bernie's been winning consistently, and I think it's mathematically understandable. Every time we poll, every time Steve and everybody polls, 2/3 of the Democratic vote, 2/3 of people who call themselves Democrats are either liberal or very liberal. All Bernie ever had to do, and he's done it beautifully, is get a majority of that, and he's up to the mid-30s. If you get half of 67, you're into the mid-30s, and that's where he's gotten it a little better. Biden, his only prayer was to consolidate the third of the vote that's moderate and conservative. And he got nowhere near clearing that field. Nowhere near. That's split up 4 ways now. And so with new people coming in, DeVal Patrick came in, he didn't make it. Bloomberg is in, he's probably going to survive a bit longer because of his money. But that field wasn't cleared. The only way Biden could win in that 1/3 of the vote that's either moderate or conservative is to sweep it. He got nowhere near. Bernie, on the other hand, did his job. He got more than a majority of that 67%. That is the name of the game. It is pretty much over unless that changes. I was reading last night, Brian, I know you're a history guy too. I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940. And the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, "It's over." And Churchill said, "How can it be? You got the greatest army in Europe. How can it be over?" He said, "It's over." So I had that suppressed feeling. I can't be as wild as Carville, but he is damn smart. And I think he's damn right on this one. Joy.
Well, I mean, Chris, you know, I don't know if I am allowed to have an iron law of politics, but the one I've always had, you know, having worked on a couple of campaigns, you know, and looked at just the history, as you are of a history buff about American politics, is that from what I've been understanding, the hungriest community usually gets the nomination. You know, when African-American voters saw that Barack Obama was viable in Iowa, there was no way they were going to do anything but make sure that that man was a nominee and make sure he was president of the United States. You know, and if you think about the 90s, 1992, young voters made a decision. This is going to be a generation change election. We're going to have Clinton. I don't care what you say about him. We're going to have Clinton,
right? Right from my view.
But I mean, and on the Republican side, even though Donald Trump did not have a majority, the hungry constituency were white, a lot of white ethnic voters, north and south, who said, we're taking this country back from the brown people, the immigrants. We're getting rid of unlawful migration. We don't care what you say, how untoward it is. The smarty pantses, the college educated, forget them. We're the hungriest. The hungriest usually wins.
And who's hungry?
Right now, it is the Sanders people. And I think that the rest of us that sort of look at politics have underestimated the sheer unadulterated rage, the anger of working class people, especially young people who are living in with 3 roommates and have a Lyft job and an Uber job, and they can't make it, and they're looking at my generation, Gen X, who we could have it all in the Clinton years, and we were living well, and our parents and grandparents, and they're like, throw the tables over. They're turning the tables over, and they don't care what the potential result is. They're the hungriest, and he only had to consolidate them. And the moderates, the sort of mushy moderates, think that they have the luxury of luxuriating on whether they'll have someone who can speak 6 languages. You know, maybe today I want this woman who's from the Midwest, and, you know, maybe I'll go with the vice president. And even African-American older voters, they are like, we're going to go with who we know. No one else is as hungry, angry, enraged, and determined as Sanders voters. Democrats need to sober up and figure out what the hell they're going to do about that. Because if he's the nominee, that's the top of your ticket. That's the top of your ticket for Senate races, House races, gubernatorial, everything. Figure out what you're going to do, because that's looking likely.
Brian?
Wow. Chris, Joy, thank you. First of all, Chris, I just bought the book on the fall of France, so that's beyond spooky. And secondly, I hope we repeat what Joy Reid just said in many different venues on many different broadcasts. Jen Palmieri joins us here in Las Vegas as well. Jen is a veteran of the last Democratic presidential campaign. Talk about what Joy Reid just said.
I think she's really right, because if you think about young voters, their experiences, I'm a Gen Xer too, it's very different from my own experience. So what they lived through 9/11, you know, Columbine is their experience, the Great Recession, They have to have 3 jobs. And so his vision of America is very close to their experience. And that is a very powerful thing. And if you look at the entrance poll numbers, like Bernie's supporters are committed to him across the board. They think he can beat Trump. They think he's best on issues, that there is no category in which they do not believe in their candidate. So that passion is with them. And they worked the hell out of this state over the course of the last 4 years. And, what's really important about him winning over young Hispanics is young Hispanics are very influential within their own family. They are often the English speaker in their family. They often translate for their parents. Their parents are sometimes mixed status. They may have one parent a citizen, one parent who is not, but they are extraordinarily influential. So you see, even though the Culinary Worker Union did not support Sanders and even put out a letter against Medicare for all, and the culinary workers love their health care plan, it appears that a lot of them voted for Sanders along with their younger children. So for him to have unlocked that voting bloc is an enormous deal. So it's not just that the Sanders campaign has passion on their side. They're very smart and they're very strategic about how they do organization as well.
What about a combination of what James said about what happens to you when you are awarded front-runner status, which we all know, and the point Chris made that they're going to kill him, but they may not stop him. Come Monday, they're going to kill him. They may not stop him.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. I mean, I've worked for front-runners before, and it is not fun. Yeah. It is actually not. The only good news is at the end you get to be the nominee, but it's not a fun process. So I think the big question, there was this whole thing about Bernie's never been vetted, and the Sanders campaign says he's been through, a number of Senate races. He went through 16. They hired one of the researchers who worked for Hillary. So they're we have all of Hillary's oppo on Bernie, and we're prepared. I think that what hasn't happened is no one's put a lot of money behind Bernie oppo, right? To use my hack vernacular.
Yeah, gets it.
Yeah, I think they do. And so the big question is, what does Michael Bloomberg do? Does Michael Bloomberg take down all of his I Like Mike ads and just put a ton of money behind anti-Sanders ads? And if he does that in the next week, because we only have 10 days until Super Tuesday, will that make a difference? And, one thing that people may not appreciate is how it's not just how big Super Tuesday is this year, adding California, but how soon it is after South Carolina. It's 3 days after South Carolina. So you needed to be organizing in those states in November in order to make a difference there. And the only people who had the money to do that really are on a sustained basis are Sanders and Bloomberg.
As we go to break, I'm going to show you pictures of the folks who have been waiting to get in to the Bernie event. He goes from El Paso to San Antonio next. This is live. These are all folks waiting to get into Bernie's next event in Texas. When we come back, we'll go back to New York. We'll talk to Nicole Wallace about the Bloomberg effect and the questions. I'm told before we run to a break, Steve Kornacki may have another tranche of numbers from today's vote here in Nevada. Steve?
We do. We can show you. And again, I want to stress these are from our spotters, not the Nevada Democratic Party, which has the official results. But I can show you from our spotters now. We got 115 precincts covered. You see, this is the first preference number, closest thing you're going to get to a popular vote. And you see, the precincts that we're seeing are just painting a picture of dominance for Bernie Sanders in this thing. 35-17 over Biden on the first preference. Buttigieg, Warren, Klobuchar. You see, there is a geographic divide that we're seeing in these initial results as well. Let me show you. Again, the lion's share of the vote in Nevada, it comes from Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Valley, like 70%. Is going to come from down here in Clark County, and about 20% is going to come from Washoe County up north. Let me show you Washoe around Reno and what we have there. You see Sanders doing not as well as he is statewide. This is a wider area, not as many African Americans, a lower Hispanic population. You see the other candidates a little bit more competitive with Sanders here on that first preference vote. Different story when you go down to Clark County to Las Vegas Valley. You see on the first preference, Sanders much stronger there. 37%. You see Biden back at 19, Buttigieg, Warren, Steyer, Klobuchar. And in fact, what you see, the interesting thing down here, I think in Clark County, is what happens on reallocation. So take a look here. When you go to that second round of voting, Steyer collapses, Warren loses ground, Klobuchar loses ground, and look where Sanders ends up. In the county where 70% of the vote of the state is, he's running at 46%. He is picking up a lot of second-round support there. We've seen in the entrance polls the ingredients that go into that, the union support, the support from Hispanics, doing well with African Americans. We talked about Nevada as the first test of a more diverse electorate, and what you're seeing in these results is that for Bernie Sanders, diversity is his strength so far. And Nicole, over to you. I'm going to get that part down before the night's over.
Maria Hinojosa has joined us. Maria, the blaring headline today is Bernie Sanders' dominance in the size of his lead, his dominance in the size of his crowds. We just saw the shot there. And it would seem his dominance here with parts of the electorate that people had before today thought might not be available to him. All that, Bernie can lay claim to dominance really in every category with what we're seeing so far about today's result.
You know, in some ways, in a lot of ways, this was Biden's to lose in Nevada. And he's not doing so well. And it really is, you know, when you think about the Culinary Workers Union, the largest union, right? 54% of those union members are Latinos and Latinas. 10% African American, 15% AAPI, Asian American and Pacific Islanders. So these are people who did, even though there was the criticism and having been there on the ground, talking to people, they were like, you know, we're very concerned about our health care, and they still went with Bernie. I'm fascinated. I'm like, what are those conversations? Also, is Bernie just really touching what, obviously he's got very strong ground game, right? So if you're knocking on the doors of Latina voters and saying, come on and do this, that means something. But I'm wondering if he's also connecting with the absolute total frustration with the breakdown of what we've been living in for the past 4 years. And they're just, as we say in Spanish, hasta acá. You know, they're just like done. And they're like buying in with, let's just go hardcore with Bernie. It's fascinating.
Well, and Robert, that's his message today. I believe Bernie tweeted this morning, you know, basically, I don't care about the Republican establishment. I don't care about the Democratic establishment. No one can stop us. I mean, I think if that's what they're hearing, that is because that's what he's saying.
Well, and look, let's give him a lot of credit right now. He's the most consistent performer. He has the most resources, right? He's got $11 million that's already being spent on Super Tuesday advertising. Biden, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Warren have $2 million, right? He's, again, the most
He's got an online fundraising operation.
He clearly has figured out how to organize, at least in Nevada, Hispanic votes. He's improved his standing with African American votes. If he were to finish with 42% of the vote, would be a wipeout.
Yes.
And it puts real pressure on folks. You're going to have some big names that aren't going to be viable, that aren't going to get delegates out of here, or going to get a small number. And look, we're heading into a place where, as was said, if you haven't been organizing in Super Tuesday states for a while, I think it's real instructive and really, really smart. Bernie Sanders isn't in Nevada right now.
Right.
Because guess what? The race isn't going to be decided in Nevada.
Right.
It's a stepping stone. He's in Texas where there's a big Latino vote, and it's going to happen. It's the second biggest prize on Super Tuesday. So a lot of credit to their campaign right now because they're lapping the field in a big way. And quite frankly, I think there's nobody that looks capable right now of putting together. We saw Bloomberg have a poor debate. Buttigieg in the exit poll is not getting strong African-American numbers, and we're heading to that place. And quite frankly, Biden is second, but great after finishing fourth and fifth. So the most consistent performer with the most resources is your far and away your national frontrunner.
Even though Bernie tweeted this morning that the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment can't stop him, what he was really doing was pretty smart, because what he's setting this up is, as I take on the mantle of frontrunner status, which I'm sure he was confident this morning he was going to take on, because they know their numbers on the ground. They know that they were going to have a really good day. So now when the attacks come, it's the establishment attacking him. It is the establishment trying to take him out. And what Joy was right. I mean, you have got to give it to Bernie Sanders. His voters are inspired by his stances on the issues. They believe that he has been consistent. He's never wavered. He didn't flinch on the fracking issue the other night. So he's got all these volunteers, and he's got the resources to deploy them effectively. And now he's got the insurance policy. We've seen how effective it is for somebody in power to say the only people who are attacking me are just the swamp, the establishment, the people that, frankly, President Sanders would have to work with if and when he became president, which he may very well become president.
He also has Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So if you were looking at Bernie Sanders in El Paso, and I was watching who's behind him, so a lot of young people, but he had over 45-year-old Latinos and Latinas right behind him, and I'm like, that's interesting. Because if he's making that connection with the younger ones, who are definitely right there with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but then also you're getting the over middle-aged Latino and Latinas who are buying in. And now he's going to, did you see those lines in San Antonio?
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's just like, so this is...
But I can't let this conversation exist in a parallel universe from the one Brian and Clara and I have with James Carville. But what happens to all those down-ballot races James Carville's so worried about?
Yeah, and it's a good question. And the chances are we don't know what the practical impact is, right? We can guess, but I think... all of us, if we took a lie detector test, would tell you 2016 was going to happen differently than we all predicted.
I don't need a lie detector.
Right, exactly.
I was wrong about that. I was definitely wrong.
But look, there's no doubt there are going to be some problematic positions. There already are. But it will be interesting to watch, particularly as we get closer to this the delegate conversation around the convention, because you're going to have some people that are going to have to make a choice, because I think it is very unlikely, despite how well Sanders is doing today, that anybody approaches a majority of pledged delegates. But it is important. The one thing I would really add on to what you guys were talking about with Carville is it is entirely possible that 10 days from now, Bernie Sanders has a lead that isn't catchable, right? So I'm reminded of seeing Jen Palmieri. Hillary Clinton came out of Super Tuesday with a 191 pledged delegate lead. The lowest that was for the remainder of the race was 187. And as David Plouffe said, you got to start winning then these races by 25 and 30%. Right now, Sanders is winning by 25 and 30%.
Right.
You got to start lapping him 2-1 to start catching him in delegates. It's almost impossible to do. The next debate will be interesting. The last debate was interesting. They probably picked the wrong person to have an interesting debate about.
You think they should have challenged Sanders if they wanted to be in the delegate race?
I think absolutely.
Because it comes down to
he has cemented himself as the front runner tonight. In reality, he was the front runner last week.
He's the front runner after Iowa, probably.
I was surprised. The one person that seemed to understand strategically what was happening here was Pete, right? Because he always framed it first as like, well, there's Bernie, there's Bloomberg, there's Bernie, there's Bloomberg. Then, quite frankly, what do you remember most about the debate with Pete? He's on Amy Klobuchar. He's picking on her. She's in fifth.
Right. Campaigns have to pick on the person.
Yeah.
All right, a break for us. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere.
Break out the butter. Lobster Fest has something for every lobster fan, like wild-caught lobster, butter poached, creamy, and roasted. Or try lobster sautéed with crab, shrimp, and more. So hurry in and let's Lobster Fest. Or get it to go at redlobster.com.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins. Consuming us with a need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
Well-qualified lessees can lease the 2019 Alfa Romeo Giulia for $339 a month.
5G will change business in America. T-Mobile has the first and only nationwide 5G network. And with it, you can shape the future. We've invested $30 billion and built our new 5G network for businesses like yours. While some 5G signals only go a few blocks, T-Mobile 5G goes for miles. No other 5G signal goes farther or is more reliable in business. Tomorrow is in your hands. Partner with T-Mobile for business today.
You try to stay ahead of the mess, but scrubbing still takes time. Now there's new Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. It's the faster way to clean as you go. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. It cleans grease 5 times faster. New Dawn Power Wash. Spray, wipe.
I'm your mother-in-law.
And I like to question your every move. Like this left turn.
It's the next one.
You always drive this slow.
How did you make someone I love?
That must be why you're always so late.
I do not speed, and that's saving me cash with DriveWise.
Yeah, my son, he did say that you were the safe option.
And that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
So get Allstate.
Stop bossing.
Where good drivers save 40% for avoiding mayhem like me. It's my son's favorite color. You should try it. He always drive like an old lady.
You're an old lady.
Hi, we're Warby Parker, an eyewear company that offers high-quality glasses starting at $95, including prescription lenses. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com. Oh yeah, about those prescription lenses. Warby Parker glasses come standard with custom-cut polycarbonate lenses that have been treated with scratch-resistant and anti-reflective coatings. Nice. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
When it's time to sell your home, there's a lot of money on the line. How can you trust your real estate agent will get it right? There's good news. With HomeLight, you can compare actual performance data on thousands of agents near you, so you know who sells quickly, who sells for the best price. We'll match you with the perfect agent for your needs. And best of all, it's free. Sell your home for more money. Go to HomeLight.com today.
Just want to set the scene by showing you this. We saw this on our incoming feeds. This is at the Las Vegas headquarters of the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Joe Biden has been able to count on a lot of union support over the years. Think about what a different plot line this is for the former vice president and his campaign versus what they were expecting mere months ago. That Joe Biden lectern, which at some point tonight will have Joe Biden standing behind it, is not the story. That guy in the #1 position, upper left, is the story. We still don't know the full story here in Nevada because we don't have all the numbers from today's caucuses and won't for some time, though the best reading on what the story is on a slow rolling basis is one Steve Kornacki standing at the big board. Steve?
Yeah, Brian, and again, we got those spotters we keep telling you who are scattered throughout the state giving us some results. We got 143 precincts right now that the spotters have reported results from. We think, again, if everything goes right with these spotters, we should be able to get about 300. That's the limit of what we can do without getting anything from the state party. But so about half of what we might be able to get on our own, we can show you. Again, it's a picture of domination here for Sanders, more than doubling up Biden on the first round, the first preference. What you were just showing on the screen there is what the total looks like after reallocation when you account in those second choices, those candidates not making the threshold. And you can see the difference here. First preference, Sanders 35, Biden 16. You factor in the second choices, the lion's share of those second choice votes are going to Bernie Sanders. He's going from 35 to 42. Now Biden's 24 points behind him. Biden is in second place here technically. That's technically better than he did in Iowa and New Hampshire, but you see he's 24 points behind Sanders because those second preference votes are going to Sanders. And again, if you take a look down here in Clark County, 70% of the vote's going to come out of here. Sanders is sitting there at 46% in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas area here. And one other stat, I just took a look. We've kept getting these entrance polls updated, Brian. We talked so much in the run-up to Nevada about this is the first test of a diverse electorate. Here's one way of looking at it. Among white voters, Sanders is getting 28% in our entrance poll. Among non-white voters, 44%. So as I said in the last hit, the diversity of Nevada, it is proving to be Bernie Sanders' strength.
Steve Kornacki, thanks. John Ralston, thankfully, is here with us in Las Vegas, and I'm not being snarky or smart or cute when I ask, wouldn't most voters equate initial preference with walking in and voting? Isn't that what we commonly call voting?
It is, Brian, and this is a hybrid now. It's not just a crazy caucus. It's a crazy hybrid caucus with ranked choice voting and early voting and now a caucus. And people are going to say Nevada's nuts and this is no way to pick a nominee, and they're probably right. On the other hand, Brian, based on what Steve just said about the entrance polls and the small number of precincts we have, this is a blowout for Bernie Sanders. So any way you would have chosen in Nevada, Bernie Sanders was going to win big because he had the residual support from 2016 when he did well here. And he has a real organization this time run by political professionals. And so that is the story here, I think, Brian.
Let's talk about the culinary workers. I've long said, you've heard me say 1,000 times, you take the culinary workers out of Las Vegas collapses of its own weight, and good luck trying to have overnight guests. They were told explicitly in a memo from their leadership, which pointedly refused to endorse any single candidate, that this guy Sanders from Vermont is after your health care plan, your hard-fought, hard-won union health care plan, the union health care plans that built the American middle class. And yet, I'm fascinated to see what percentage of culinary workers supported Bernie Sanders.
We know of results now, Brian, at about 6 or 7 of the precincts that are located actually in the casinos populated
like
by
the Bellagio,
like the Bellagio. And Bernie Sanders has won or tied every one but the Paris, where we're sitting now. And that is an astonishing turnaround, right? I have to tell you, though, and I have to stay in these hotels occasionally when I want to get away from it all. I may not be able to after what I'm about to say. This seems to say that the culinary is a paper tiger when it comes to these caucuses. They endorsed Barack Obama in 2008, made a big show of it. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, although Obama got the delegates. Look what happened this time. They didn't endorse, but they did put out that very strongly worded flyer. And so this is true, and you know this too, Brian, of union endorsements. Sometimes the rank and file don't necessarily go along with what the leaders are telling them to do. Bernie Sanders already had support within the culinary, despite their position on Medicare for All, before they came out with that flyer. But this domination in these precincts here in these casinos, it's funny. This is kind of what happened to Barack Obama versus Hillary Clinton. When Hillary Clinton went into the casinos, went to the back of the halls and talked to culinary workers, she won those precincts too.
And while I have you, talk about the lion in winter and what role he has, the man from Searchlight, Nevada, the former Senate Majority and Minority Leader, veteran Democratic Senator Harry Reid.
So let's talk about Harry Reid. He was in office back when the last one took place, and he had tremendous influence. He even got the culinary, I think, at the end to get off the mat to save Hillary Clinton here. He is not what he once was. He's not in office. His health is not great, although he is still super sharp mentally. I talk with him. I text with him. He did not endorse. He did not do much to help any of the candidates here this time. I think he's probably glad he didn't endorse before the caucus, because I think he probably would have endorsed Joe Biden, and that wouldn't have looked good. It's probably part of the reason the culinary ultimately decided not to endorse. Brian, the writing has been on the wall here for a few weeks. These campaigns, as I said earlier, had essentially been conceding that they were at best going to finish second. But what do you say now? What's Joe Biden going to say when he goes out to that lectern? I finished in second, a mere 25 points behind Bernie Sanders. This is a real disaster for those other candidates.
John Ralston, few know more about Nevada politics, if anyone at all. Another break for us. When we come back, we're going to go to Democratic headquarters here in Nevada. Ask them if they have any keys to the secret sauce here. Is there anything we're missing? Probable answer, yes.
I don't add up the years, and I don't count the wrinkles. But what I do count on is Boost High Protein.
And now introducing new Boost Women with key nutrients to help support thyroid, bone, hair, and skin health, all with great taste. New Boost Women, designed just for you.
When I started this commute, everyone said I was crazy. So 15 years ago, I got my first Subaru, and I did it anyway. For more than 500,000 miles, my Outback always got me there. So when it was time, of course I got a new one. Because my kids still need me. And I need them.
Welcome to the all-new Subaru Outback, the most reliable Outback ever. Go where love takes you.
Through the AT&T network, edge-to-edge intelligence gives you the power to see every corner of your growing business. From managing inventory to detecting and preventing threats. To scaling up your production, giving you a nice big edge over your competition. That's the power of edge-to-edge intelligence.
I'm glad you're enjoying this.
Now, the first big adventure of the year is calling. Journey of a Lifetime. The Call of the Wild. Rated PG. Now playing.
At today's Best Western, stay 2 nights and get a free night for your next stay. 1 night, 2 nights, free night. Book now at bestwestern.com.
Breakfast combos with all-you-can-eat pancakes? This calls for all-you-can-eat silverware. Get IHOP's all-you-can-eat pancakes free with the purchase of any breakfast combo. Or just get the 2x2x2 combo with all-you-can-eat pancakes for just $4.99 Monday through Friday.
What's going on? Let me help. Here we go. There, it's up there.
Hey, Josh.
Wrinkles send the wrong message. Help prevent them before they start with Downy Wrinkle Guard.
Hey, bud.
So you won't get caught with wrinkles again.
This is Desert Creek Honey, an artisan honey maker on Amazon. This is the owner, Blake, with his 8 million coworkers.
They never complain, they never give up, and that really inspires me when I try to run a small business.
This is how they get their honey. This is Blake, walking like a boss because he is a boss of his own business. More than half of everything sold on Amazon comes from small and medium-sized businesses like Desert Creek Honey, and you can find them on Amazon.
As a struggling actor, I need all the breaks that I can get. At Liberty Butchermilk.
Cut.
Liberty... Line.
Cut. Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Cut. Liberty... Am I allowed to riff? What if I come out of the water? Liberty Bibbity.
Cut. We'll dub it.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Here's the latest board. This is reallocated preference. As America jumps for its dictionaries, Steve Kornacki is at the big board. Steve, what does it all mean?
Yeah, we can just take you through why, again, the results here are limited. 182 precincts right now. What I'm showing you, different than what we just had on the screen, this is the initial preference from the precincts where our spotters are. You see Sanders had 35% there, moving up to 42% when you reallocate. Again, 182 precincts, that's where we have spotters. We still have 0 from the state Democratic Party, and it's the state Democratic Party that ultimately reports out these official results that delegates are based on, that winners are declared on, and all of that. I can tell you, now it's been 3 hours since the doors opened, and we don't have a single precinct being reported by the state party. Certainly, I'll give people flashbacks to Iowa. I can tell you that the National Election Pool is a consortium of various media outlets, including NBC News, that has folks out in the field monitoring these precincts throughout the state. They have just told us that they have reports from from 6 of their reporters in 60 out of 63 sites that they have these reporters on the ground. 6 out of 63, or about 10%, who have said they have witnessed issues at these precincts with incorporating the early vote with the same day caucus activity. Remember, 75,000 early votes cast statewide. They're trying to take those results from folks who voted days ago and merge it with what's happening in real time with the people who show up and break up into these groups. So at about 10% of these locations where the National Election Pool has folks witnessing the activity, they say they have been seeing these issues. I don't know if that goes into this delay that we are seeing in terms of getting any precincts reported out statewide. The other significance, again, of not having anything from the state Democratic Party that we can relay to you from them, since they do the official results. They are the ones who officially say, this is what happened in this precinct, this is what happened in that precinct. Our decision desk which makes calls, which makes characterizations, is limited in what it can do and what it can say. It wants to see official, formal vote from the state Democratic Party. What we have, again, these are reports coming in from spotters who are at these various precincts, 186 of them you see right here. Spotters who took the vote down as it was announced in these places have sent it in to our consortium, and we're able to report that, and we're able to report the second preference, but we're not able to report that final delegate total, that key delegate total. That comes from the state party, and the state party hasn't given us any precincts yet, so you can't, if you don't see anything that's official, if you don't see anything from the state party, you can't get any kind of characterization from our decision desk beyond what we've said so far.
Hey, Steve Ralston wants in on this fast before we go over to the state party. What did you have to add?
I feel badly for Steve, a guy who exists on data. He's hurting tonight. I can tell that. Listen, the state Democratic Party here learned something from Iowa. I think they decided we would rather be later with results and correct and not have to go through what Iowa went through. So I think they're doing all kinds of quality control before they put out the first numbers, Brian. They want to make sure that people aren't going to be able to come back and say, well, look at all these errors. The kinds that Steve is talking about now, this was always going to be the most difficult issue. You have to transfer these 75,000 votes over to the exact precincts, then you have to have the exact ranked choices. Hundreds of volunteers, thousands of volunteers, you're going to have mistakes made. I don't think they'll put anything out official until they are sure of the numbers. That is the lesson they learned from Iowa.
I.e., perhaps as late as when much of the East Coast has been to sleep for several hours. Now, only in Vegas can you say, let's go from Paris to Rio and just mean switching between two hotel and casinos. But today finds us in the Paris Theater, and Garrett Hake is just down the strip in Rio. That's where the temporary headquarters have been set up for the state Democratic Party. Hey, Garrett, as they say, what's the mood there?
Well, Brian, this enormous ballroom is just starting to fill in with reporters and other folks from around the state coming to be on the ground when these results come in. I think I can put Steve's mind a little bit at ease here, having just spoken to the spokesperson from the Nevada Democratic Party who tells me they are getting their results in, despite reports that folks have had trouble getting some of those numbers in. They are getting the results in, and they do intend to have them up shortly, that being the operative word from a message I've just received, that they are hoping to get them up soon. Excuse me, I'll be very specific. Soon is the words from the Nevada State Democratic Party as they try to turn these results around. Unlike with a primary where the votes come in all day long, in this case, despite the early vote being taken early, it doesn't really count till it's combined with the caucus vote, and all those caucuses are finishing up more or less around the same time. I was in that site a little bit earlier today. We had 10 different precincts, and they all finished probably within 20 minutes of each other. So all of those results from 2,000 plus precincts all over the state coming in at the same time, but I am assured that they are in fact coming in and that we will see results in the not too distant future, Brian.
All right, Garrett Hake, thank you. Hey, Steve Kornacki, we, the collective news media, love the post-debate bounce story. We're forever talking about the candidates who received a bounce coming out of what's perceived as a strong debate performance. You can't blame people for looking at today wondering, hey, I thought Warren had what was seen as a strong night. Just remind folks, by percentage, how much of the vote was done and dusted before the debate?
Yeah, we don't know. We know that 75,000 early votes, the state party told us, were cast. We know that turnout in 2016 for these caucuses was 84,000. That turnout in 2008, the first time they ever did them, was 117,000 and change. And we expect that that 75,000 that voted early is probably the majority. Is it the overwhelming majority? Is it the slim majority? We don't know. We expect certainly that final number to eclipse the 2016 number. The question is, would it get up close to that 2008 level, maybe even exceed that? But yes, at least 75,000, probably a majority, were cast ahead of time. And just one other quick point there on what Garrett was just saying. I hope he's right. I hope the state party is right about that. But I do want to say, soon was the word Iowa gave us hour after hour. I remember being right behind this board, checking in at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, midnight, and we kept hearing from the state party, they are coming soon. Now, again, I want to give the Nevada Democratic Party the benefit of the doubt here. They are trying to do something much more complicated than before. They have said they took some steps as a result of Iowa to try to make this smoother. But again, we are now at 6:05 p.m. on the East Coast, 3:05 Pacific time at this same point in 2016. Different system back then, but at this same point in 2016, we did have 88% of the vote in. So hopefully what the state party is relaying to Garrett is not just bluster, and there's actually something to back it up. We'll see.
To our viewers, as soon as Garrett and or Steve have anything, we'll go right back to them. But for now, I see Nicole Wallace in the New York studio. Nicole?
Thanks, Brian. We've been joined by new friends. The Rev Al Sharpton's here, my colleague Ari Melber here. Rev, we were talking in the break about the conversation with James Carville. It deeply agitates the Sanders base when their tactics and their enthusiasm for their candidate is called out. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think he has a very passionate and committed base, and I think that's very good. But if he is undoubtedly the front runner now, if they're going to expand and bring the Senate and the House with them, they're going to have to learn not to be thin-skinned and make friends. You sometimes have to go into combat to win primaries. But if you're going to be the nominee, you have to deal with addition, not subtraction. So if I was Bernie, I would calm, and I've had to do this in my civil rights career, you have to calm people down because you really need to win, because the objective for the Democrats is to beat Donald Trump. You don't want to have half the party angry with you. Secondly, if he doesn't have a Senate with him, if he's elected president, and the House, he won't get any of the things that he's proposed, which are good done, and he ends up becoming the enemy of his own troops because nothing will be done. So I think that there needs to be a little dress rehearsal on how we deal with front running so that they can add and keep going, because you don't want to get people to where they're saying they not only, I don't think, can govern, but they're in many ways affronting me, and I'm not supporting the candidacy. You can't win like that, not the big prize.
You sat down yesterday, and we're on, we got to talk about it at 4 o'clock yesterday, and the interview runs tomorrow with Mike Bloomberg. He hangs over today's results. I don't know in what regard, but as you said, Bernie is an obvious dominant frontrunner now, but I guess he hangs over it as an open question, whether his money is a factor, either behind, I guess, Bernie, if he's the ultimate nominee, or behind his own candidacy or behind a Bernie alternative. What did you hear from him in your interview that sheds light on any of that?
Well, first I was asking him why he did so bad the first
What did he say?
He said he had a bad night.
Yeah.
And I asked him, is he going to do different on Tuesday at South Carolina's debate? And he said, well, just watch. So I think he may be a little different, but I don't know if it will matter. I think that the question of money, one of the things that I think was interesting that was not raised is when I talked to Michael Bloomberg and I said, you and Bernie Sanders differ. If Sanders wins the nomination, and you said you will commit a lot of money whether you win or not, will you support Sanders? He said yes. Well, no one has asked Bernie, if Bloomberg wins, would you support Bloomberg? No one has asked Bernie when we've gone through, and nobody's beat Bloomberg up more than I have on Stop and Frisk. I led a lot of the rallies in New York, about the crime bill, about his stand on guns. So a lot of this, when you get into South Carolina and forward, a lot where it's an expanded black voting base, and he did better than expected among black voters in Nevada tonight, but you're dealing with an expanded base. If Tuesday night they start chipping away at some of that, does that chip away at some of his turnout? And I think that that's the question. But I think Carville was right. You've got to also make the argument, if you don't bring the Senate with you, and if you lose the House, we're talking about just headhunting here, and you could lose the body, and therefore you get nothing done. You cannot run this country if you only have the White House and you have a Republican Senate and a Republican House. Nothing will get done. You'll be sitting there arguing for 4 years, and the people that are passionate will be frustrated.
You know, Ari, this question of vetting Bernie Sanders was something, and the Rouse right is something that James Carville brought up. And I know that the Biden campaign intended for that to be their message this week. Their message had to, I think, by necessity, be more about their own viability after Iowa. in New Hampshire. But why do you think Bernie's record hasn't been vetted?
Well, ironically, it's partly because of the establishment's issues with him. So I think the underestimation of Senator Sanders has left some of the other candidates, and perhaps to some degree, the press plays a role in this. Print articles that vet front runners may have not kicked into gear early enough. So I think it's a fascinating and layered question. I worked a presidential campaign. You've worked for a president. It's all about what you can count. I mean, I worked in the caucus and in delegate tracking in the 2004 Kerry campaign, and it's what you can count. So people close to this, like you, like Mr. Carville, like others, have noticed that in all the ways you can count, Senator Sanders is not just leading the race right now. In many of the ways you can count, he has been leading as long as there's been a 2020 primary. I don't count a day where Joe Biden was leading in anything we can count. And the other thing that relates to the Rev's interview with Bloomberg that, as you said, hangs over this, Senator Bernie Sanders is the only person in this race right now who is voter funded and can finish the race. That is very important because many of these other candidates who hope to be his alternative and hope that the vetting might make people think twice can't even draw on voter donations from Democrats or others who are involved in this race to say whether they'll be around in a month or two. So in those countable ways, Senator Sanders is the person in the lead. Whether in the next debate, without the billionaire taking up so much oxygen, people may figure out that they want to press him, I think is a really important question.
And Maria, where are we if we feel like we have a choice between a president who views himself as above the law, and that's not my assessment, it's the assessment of Democrats and Republicans who've been part of the Justice Department and past presidents, and what Ari and the Rev are describing as basically a candidate who hasn't been vetted by either the press or the other Democrats?
I think a lot of people are feeling a little bit worried right now. But as Ari says, I mean, my question is, hello, Democrats. What were you thinking? I mean, you can have journalists and analysts who have ideas about what might be happening and we can expound. But if you're looking at the numbers, you're right, Ari. He's been leading for a long time here. What is the response? I mean, right now, I think that there's so much concern about the Democratic Party. Look at what's happening with Nevada right now, the level of disorganization that we're all kind of feeling. And I think that there's a concern about what up with the party here? What were you thinking? Why didn't you analyze this? And I think that's part of Bernie's appeal, too. He's not tied as tightly to the Democratic Party.
You're pointing at party leadership, and to echo that, this is a party that set rules for the debates. We've pointed out here on air that the party chairman said publicly in January, you don't change the rules midstream because candidates are forced out. And Senator Booker and Harris, I think, had support. There was interest. When Senator Booker didn't make the debate stage, he understood it was going to be very hard to stay in the conversation and the fundraising. They just changed the rules to bring in a self-funder in Mike Bloomberg to make the debate stage. And I think what hangs over this is that put a lot of energy and attention on someone who wasn't the front runner. So that's also a part of it.
Bernie ought to be grateful. I mean, I think in many ways
it worked out great
they ought to
for
be
him.
grateful. I think that the strategy was if you have to have 15% to get delegates, I don't think it was crazy to say you have to have a higher level of the poll, because if you couldn't get 10% in the poll, how are you going to get 15%? So I never bought that argument. But I think
why, this is the question. I don't have the answer. Why did the Democratic Party rush to bring someone in who, as the Reverend points out, wasn't running in those states? But he hadn't won a delegate.
But I think that they were dealing with a percentage that's saying if you've got to get 15% of the delegate of the vote to get delegates in Iowa or whatever, you have to get a certain amount in the poll. But in the end, Sanders ought to be glad they brought Bloomberg in. And if they go after Bloomberg rather than Bernie and raise some of these vetting questions Tuesday night, that Bloomberg becomes his best aide. But the real problem, I think, I agree with Mary and Ari about the state Democrats and the established Democratic Party slayed back off Bernie because they underestimated him. I also think a lot of people were intimidated by the trawlers and all. And the reason I didn't care, I grew up with people throwing things at us, calling us names in marches. And I think that if you're going to be intimidated, you ought not be the head of the party. You ought not be sitting in a seat. If you can't go up against trawlers on social media, you ought not be running for president. Just that simple.
The wisest words spoken all day. Thank you, my friend. I needed that. I'm going to turn this over to Steve Kornacki, who's got numbers
We've got some numbers for you. We've got a statement, too, I can read to you that just came in from the Nevada State Democratic Party. We've been asking about when those official results will come in. They say caucuses are running smoothly, results are coming in, and we'll have them up soon. We've been prepared all along for a high influx of results as caucuses wrap up, and we're working diligently to accommodate and continue processing the high volume of incoming results from precinct chairs. That's a statement just coming in from the Nevada State Democratic Party. The one other entrance poll result that I did want to share with you, a theme we've been talking about, the diverse base of support that Sanders seems to have out here in Nevada. When you look at the moderate conservative vote here in these Democratic caucuses, it's about a third of all caucus goers in the entrance poll called themselves moderate or conservative. Check out this divide here, because I think we don't often think enough about this when we look at moderate voters. Among white moderate and conservative voters, Pete Buttigieg is leading this thing. Joe Biden is running in second. Amy Klobuchar is tied with him, and Bernie Sanders is all the way back at 16%. This is self-described moderates who are white. Now check out Hispanic moderates. I got to go back here. Hispanic moderates, this is a very large group in Nevada, and here's what you see. Bernie Sanders is running away with this. Nearly half of the vote in this crowded field among Hispanic, moderate, and conservatives. Biden back at 19, Buttigieg barely in double digits, and everybody else below that. So when we talk about moderate voters, I think we've talked about them in one context in Iowa, in New Hampshire. Overwhelmingly white states where you would look at self-identified moderates, you say, well, Buttigieg out in front, Klobuchar maybe out in front, Biden having a shot. When you start talking about more diverse voters who call themselves moderate and conservative, very different result.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thank you very much. We have been checking in with Garrett Hake, as you pointed out. The statement, just to repeat, from the State Democratic Party: caucuses are running smoothly. Results are coming in, and we'll have them up soon. We've been prepared all along for a high influx of results as caucuses wrap up, and we're working diligently to accommodate and continue processing the high volume of incoming results from precinct chairs. There's the board. We'll fit in a break in our coverage, and we'll... Oh, Chris Matthews. I'm sorry. Chris.
Yes, Brian. I'm here with Anthony Brown, who's here for Buttigieg. Oh, that's all right. Where are we at? We're in. Anthony,
hey,
how's it going with Buttigieg? It looks like he may get second tonight.
Yeah, look, I think, first of all, it looks like Senator Sanders will do well today, and got to acknowledge that. But I think the real story here is that Pete Buttigieg could finish second. He's a close third according to the spot results. And here's a guy who a year ago nobody in Nevada knew him. Right. Vice President Biden claimed that he was going to do very well among communities of color. And Pete could very well finish second in Nevada. So another demonstration of how we're pulling together a coalition.
Well, that's another 1-2 from Iowa, 1-2 from New Hampshire, 1-2 from Nevada, possibly. Is he the alternative to Bernie?
I think he's for, in the non-revolutionary lane that Senator Sanders is in. I think that Pete Buttigieg is that alternative.
We're watching out here because it is the Strip, and it is Vegas, and you gamble out here. One of the ways of breaking ties at some point in these caucuses is cutting the cards. Is there any chance, I'm being facetious now, that the moderates will get together, the alternative to Bernie, and cut the cards, and one of them run and get that half of the vote?
Listen, I don't think there's going to be the camps coming together and flipping a coin to decide who's going forward. I think what we're seeing is that among that moderate lane, that non-revolutionary lane, that Pete is emerging as the go-to alternative to Senator Sanders. He appeals across generation, across geography, and look, he's doing better in Nevada, and I'm confident he will in South Carolina, in a diverse jurisdiction. I mean, a lot of people are saying, hey, this is when we're going to have the real first test because it's a diverse state, which it is, and Pete is right now, at least along the spot results, he's right up on the vice president's.
Well, Anthony, Congressman, we're going to get the results. We'll know whether Pete Buttigieg is in number 2 again, and if that's the case, there's a clear pattern here.
I see.
1-2 finishes.
Absolutely, 1-2 finish. He's the alternative to the revolutionary lane.
And if Biden gets back into number 2, he's gangbusters going into South Carolina, although it looks like the big news out here and the big noise is Bernie. Back to you, Brian.
Hey, Chris, I'm not above quoting Chris Matthews, and I have this written down on my legal pad from your last segment about Bernie, about his new exposure as the front runner, and about how they're going to come at him. They're going to kill him, but they may not stop him, which is unique to politics, a fascinating quote. I think you're probably 100% right.
Well, what they're going to do is go after his political history. I've been watching some of it on social media. It's not devastating. It's tough. I mean, his comments vis-a-vis Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, his comments about Maduro, his comments about Castro, these go beyond the sort of safe domestic, what you call democratic socialism. He has sort of he's sort of flirtations, I guess you'd call them. And I think it's interesting. I don't think they're that dangerous, but he has to explain them at some point. Why has he been so adventurous with these left-wing regimes around the world? Explain his view in the Cold War. I think he just has to explain. I don't think he's on the red side or anything or disloyal. I think he just has to explain what socialism means to him today. He says Denmark, that's not selling. He has a lot wider interest in ideology than what they're doing in Denmark. I'd ask him, who's the prime minister of Denmark? I'd ask him if he's ever been there. He's been to Moscow. He's been to these Latin American countries. I don't think it's dangerous, but I think he has to get there first before the Trump people get there, because when they get there, they're not going to make it look so savory. That's what I think.
Chris Matthews, thanks. Thanks to the congressman as well. As we go to a break, we'll check in. The crowd is filling in at the Biden event. This is at the headquarters of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, commonly known as the men and women who give Las Vegas its warm glow visible from space. Our coverage continues right after this.
This President's Day, I do solemnly swear to faithfully overcome all weather, seek new heights, and exercise my right to go anywhere and do anything in the longest lasting and best-selling 4x4 SUV brand. Take the oath of adventure at the Jeep President's Day event. Now get 0% APR financing plus $750 bonus cash on the 2020 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
No matter what I wore, I worried someone might see my bladder leak underwear. So I switched to Always Discreet Boutique. Its shape-hugging threads smooth out the back, so it fits better than Depend. And no one notices. Always Discreet.
I am totally blind. And Non-24 can make me show up too early or too late or make me feel like I'm not really there. Talk to your doctor and call 844-234-2424.
If you have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, every day can begin with flakes. That's why there's Illumia. With just 2 doses, a majority of people were clear or almost clear.
Don't use if you're allergic to Illumia or any of its ingredients. Before starting treatment, your doctor should check for tuberculosis and infections. Illumia may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them.
Text info to 20808 to learn how you could leave your psoriasis symptoms behind, and ask your doctor for Illumia today for a clearer tomorrow.
At today's Best Western, stay 2 nights and get a free night for your next stay. 1 night, 2 nights, free night. Book now at bestwestern.com.
Wherever we want to go, auto-save your way there with Chase. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Hi, we're Warby Parker, an eyewear company that offers high-quality glasses starting at $95, including prescription lenses. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
When it's time to sell your home, there's a lot of money on the line. How can you trust your real estate agent will get it right? There's good news. With HomeLight, you can compare actual performance data on thousands of agents near you, so you know who sells quickly, who sells for the best price. We'll match you with the perfect agent for your needs. Best of all, it's free. Sell your home for more money. Go to HomeLight.com today.
Cover it up. That's what I did when I started losing my hair. Then I realized I could actually do something. Now I use Keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1 a day, which means no more covering up. Get started at Keeps.com.
Without this pill, we die.
He's doing the best he can for the country.
This is the perfect time to graduate.
There's like a lot of shooting happening.
It's about how we take care of one another and how we invest in the future.
These are thoughtful voters who, more than anything, want these candidates to cut to the chase.
So many people waiting for so many results. Not that the end result appears to be in any dispute. We can't say that officially. You see the official call by our decision desk is too early to call. But it's just that people would love some of the blanks filled in. Chief among them, Steve Kornacki at the big board. Hey, Steve.
Yeah, we've got some results coming in here, and I'm talking to my producer because literally as you were coming to me, and I want to see if I can get clarification on this live on the air. Are these results these are still spotters? Okay, I apologize for that. I thought there was a chance we were getting some actual results here from the state Democratic Party because, as you can see, we did just have a pretty significant uptick in what's reported. We've got 10% of the precincts covered. I stress, though, again, these are still all from our spotters. Bernie Sanders continuing here, double the lead here on Joe Biden. This is on the first preference. You see Buttigieg, Warren, Buttigieg just over that 15% mark statewide. Warren a couple points under. Klobuchar, Steyer further back. When you do the reallocation, you can see, when you do the reallocation, you can, oh my goodness, when you do the reallocation, you can see Steyer and Klobuchar really fall off, and that is where Sanders moves north of 40%. Again, no official results here in from the state Democratic Party, but our spotters have been able to cover 10% of the state here, and that Sanders lead, which we saw in the entrance poll, is certainly being matched by the results we have.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thanks. We want to bring in a frequent guest of ours, and that's Maria Teresa Kumar of Voto Latino. And I'm curious, I know you're back in Washington from being out here. Yep. Talk about the unique position that your vital constituency is in now the post-Nevada weeks ahead.
This is it, Brian. We have been talking about the Latino vote, and what we have failed to, I think for a lot of these candidates, with the exception of Bernie Sanders, to grasp is that Nevada represents the rest of the map. For the very first time, Latinos are going to be the second largest voting bloc, and they are disproportionately young. The majority of whites in America, Brian, are 54. The majority of Latinos are 19 years old. And keep in mind that you're going to have 4 million young Latinos who heard the president call their families, their loved ones, rapists and criminals, able to cast a ballot for the very first time. But this is where the difference really is. I think a lot of folks are scratching their head. They're wondering why Bernie Sanders is doing so well among Latino voters, and they're saying that they're not quite understanding the dynamics. Bernie Sanders has been part of the Latino household when he first started running back in 2016. Unlike the other Democrats when he was running against Hillary Clinton was a household name for an older generation of Latinos, for my mother, for my grandmother, and so they trusted the Clintons wholeheartedly. And now Bernie Sanders is filling up a vacuum because the other ones aren't really a household name. Had President Obama doggedly been knocking on doors and talking to the Latino community, either for Biden or for Warren or for any of their candidates, this would be a much tighter race among two front-runners, either Bernie and the Obama guy. That has not been the case. And if you want to know where this goes, I would look very closely at what happens between California and Texas. In California, Brian, you're going to have a lot of young voters really enthusiastically mobilizing for Bernie Sanders. Texas is a much more conservative state among Latinos. It'll be interesting to see where that vote really goes. Those delegates really are up for grabs. Warren has been doing a great job working very closely with Julian Castro. You're seeing ads and nonstop by Tom Steyer, the same thing with Bloomberg. So while you see a Bernie enthusiasm in Texas, because it is much more of a conservative state, I would encourage folks to watch that.
Maria, that's Nicole Wallace in New York.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi. I'm looking at the raw numbers because I have a great view of Steve Kornacki's board. We're looking at the, votes based on 4,900 or 5,700 voters, 2,600. It's such a small number of voters. I wonder if you can extrapolate based on your experience and your work, whether these, from your sense and from your travels and your outreach, whether you think these track nationally at this point.
Well, most of this is what we saw back in 2018, and I say 2018, where Latinos self-organized, and we're seeing Latinos coming out and they're mobilizing themselves because oftentimes parties don't have that outreach, nor do candidates. Bernie does. Bernie has integrated the Latino outreach as part of an integral part of his apparatus. So it's really interesting to see whether or not they continue. But if you were to ask me where the party has fault lines, in order for someone to win the White House, they need to have a coalition, yes, of Latinos, African Americans, and white women. Now, white women are not polling well with Bernie Sanders. Suburban white women in particular. Remember, they were the ones that came back to the party during the 2018 midterm elections. And so if you want to start looking at the writing on the wall, this is not a clear sweep for Bernie. And if you're looking at how do you get to the White House, you have to keep that constituency, those three pillars in mind.
What is the message from Sanders that's breaking through most effectively? Is it taking, I mean, he's been really sharpening his anti-Trump message lately, and he has a very clear set of policies around which his supporters rally. Is it the combination, or with Latino voters, does one have more power than the other?
A couple of things. One is that he has, folks underestimate the outside influence that young Latinos have in their household. They are the ones that have been navigating the country for their families long before they turn 18. And so when a parent, and this is, this happened to me, when a parent calls you or a grandparent calls you or an aunt calls you and says, hey, I recognize Bernie Sanders, but I don't recognize anybody else on the ballot. Who should I vote for? And that campaign has already targeted that young person. That's the note of influence. That's one thing. The other thing is that when people start talking about student debt and people trivialize it and say, well, yes, but they did it on their own, we're talking about a generation that's strapped with $1 trillion student debt that when it comes to now they're in their mid-30s, decide that they want to buy a home, they simply can't. They can't afford a home. Those repercussions economically are huge. And so Bernie's been able to talk to them. I would encourage other candidates to talk about those experiences. I would encourage candidates to talk about the fact that if they get elected, they will release the children in cages. To meet the Latino voter where they are and say, I understand that you're under strife, that you're afraid to go out of your house to go pick up your kids at the soccer games because you might get racially profiled. None of the candidates are really doing that. So Bernie has been able to win because he's identified the early influencer in the family.
Hey, Maria. It's Maria.
Hi, Maria.
So a question, do you think that maybe one thing we should be looking at extrapolating from Nevada is that, oftentimes when people talk about the Latinx vote, which is huge and complex, maybe a quarter of which actually supports Trump. But there is a sense that this is a socially conservative voter. Are we really seeing something that's tapping into the older generation of Latinos and Latinas, that they are actually much more progressive than we're thinking about?
This is where folks don't understand the Latino community. So Latinos, we are the fastest purveyors of business. Technically, we are the 11th largest economy in the world, and we control close to $2 trillion. But then when you start talking about, does government play a role in your life? Close to 89% of them say absolutely. The government is the one that I depend on for my child's education. They're the ones that I depend on for my health care. And so there's this juxtaposition that the other candidates have a tendency of shying away from, and Bernie espouses when it comes to this idea that there should be a government social safety net.
Maria Teresa Kumar, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking all of our questions. And over to the board we go. Steve Kornacki.
Okay, Brian, this is happening real time here. We've been saying the state Democratic Party is going to start releasing results. They just released a few precincts. I believe this is 28 precincts out of basically 2,100 statewide. Let me show you, and we're trying to figure out where they are. They did not initially tell us, but I can show you those 28 precincts that they just released. You're seeing a statewide total. You're not seeing any of the counties colored in, because they're not telling us where these precincts are yet. But remember, it's this very complicated system out there in Nevada. It's a caucus state where folks show up. They have that initial preference. We've been showing you that number from our spotters. They have that reallocated preference. We've been showing you that number. And what that's all working towards at all these different precinct locations is you're accumulating what they call out there county delegates. And this is sort of the statewide tally. This is the official tally that tallies up all of the county delegates that candidates are winning in precincts across the state. So from 28 precincts, again, 28 precincts out of 2,100 basically that are out there, this is the very early reporting we have. Sanders in the lead there, Warren, Biden. But again, this is a very small number. We're not sure exactly where it's from. The significance of this, we now have some actual official results being reported out by the state Democratic Party. We are hoping that this is the tip of the iceberg and that there is much more to come with much more specificity. So stay tuned.
All right, Steve, thank you. At just after 6:34 Eastern Time, actual results. We'll let Steve get to it. A break in our coverage. When we come back, we're going to ask the guy who writes the headlines for the Nevada Independent, who decides what the news is out of this caucus tonight.
In America, we all count, no matter where we call home, how we worship, or who we love. And the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Because this is the count that informs where hundreds of billions in funding will go each year for things like education, healthcare, and programs that touch us all. Shape your future. Start here. Learn more at 2020census.gov.
At BMW, we didn't make just one SAV, we made the ultimate range of SAVs. With unmatched power, luxury, and performance, the BMW X-Range is prepared for any road you travel. No matter who you are, no matter where you're going, no matter what's next, there's an X to take you there. Hurry in to lease a 2020 X3 X-Drive 30i for $479 a month.
Everything your trip needs for everyone you love. Expedia.
Your mission. Stand up to moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis and take it on with Rinvoq. Rinvoq, a once daily pill, can dramatically improve symptoms. Rinvoq helps tame pain, stiffness, swelling, and for some, Rinvoq can even significantly reduce RA fatigue. That's Rinvoq relief. With RA, your overactive immune system attacks your joints. Rinvoq regulates it to help stop the attack.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious infections and blood clots, sometimes fatal, have occurred, as have certain cancers, including lymphoma, and tears in the stomach or intestines, and changes in lab results. Your doctor should monitor your blood work. Tell your doctor about any infections, and if you are or may become pregnant while taking Rinvoq.
Ready to take on RA? Talk to your rheumatologist about Rinvoq relief. Rinvoq. Make it your mission.
Nerds! Oh, thanks. Well, I can... No, I got it. Sweet unholy cobalt. Is Brad's car better than mine? Better sign-up bonus? Better travel perks? Is that how Brad took that trip to Barcelona? Wait, Barcelona? Barcelona?
Steve, I got it on NerdWallet.
Ah. You said all that out loud.
Want a better credit card? We've got you. From the best rates to the best rewards, for all your credit card questions, turn to the nerds.
At Credible.com, we've helped tens of thousands of people save money by refinancing their student loans. In 3 minutes, we'll get you actual rates from multiple lenders. We could save you hundreds of dollars a month.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save.
We'll never judge you for your differences. Bring it everything you got, you missed all race. Fragile, strong, and hard, we love it all. Baby, do your thing, do your thing.
These are the latest delegate disbursement numbers out of Nevada. We have reason to believe an additional tranche of numbers will be coming out very shortly. If you come to the city of Las Vegas at all for recreation, enjoyment, means you spend your money here. Some folks at some casinos more than others. If you get a sense of having invested in Las Vegas, if you're curious about the place, we recommend The Independent, which is not only a pleasing visual experience, it's chock full of news, a lot of it the life's work of this guy next to me, John Ralston. Are you committing journalism from your phone here? Or what's the lead story for The Independent right now? How have you summed up this caucus thus far?
First of all, I do appreciate those kind words from you, Brian. I really do appreciate it. I am always committing journalism from my phone, which has impaired many a relationship. However, I am doing it. My team is out there. It's a relatively small team, but we have our entire team, 10 or 11 reporters and interns out at various sites. They're reporting in if there are problems, what the results are. But the story here, the lead is going to be Bernie Sanders. Likely, Bernie Sanders wins by a large margin, and there's this close race, it looks like, for second place. And people talk about getting tickets out of Iowa, tickets out of New Hampshire. There's only one ticket out of Nevada. Now, if Pete Buttigieg finishes in second place, he can say that he was 1 or 2 in the first 3 states, and that might help him. But what's been really fascinating, Brian, is many of the guests, with James Carville, as always, at the loudest volume, expressing this almost panic at Bernie Sanders picking up this momentum, which I think probably will allow him to win or come in second in South Carolina in a very strong position. It's the kind of feeling you hear from the Democrats, Brian, who cannot vote for Bernie Sanders for whatever reason, that they're even considering as the alternative a former Republican mayor of New York City who has plenty of baggage of his own, and it's why many Republicans are feeling pretty good right now. I'm not sure that the so-called conventional wisdom that Bernie Sanders can't win a general election is correct, but there are a lot of smart people who believe that.
All right, Chris Matthews is standing by with a special guest from the Sanders campaign. Chris?
Thank you, Brian. I think we're both in the rain here. This is not a very dry city tonight.
Not at all.
Senator, looks like, I can't tell by the polls they're not. We're getting information on our own account. We're getting a bit of it. But it looks like a huge night for Senator Sanders. 3 in a row, 3 popular vote victories in a row. Heading into next week, Super Tuesday, you couldn't be better primed.
Not at all. And it's called intentional organizing. You know, we were in this state much earlier than any other candidate, on the ground, really talking to the people and working really hard to earn the vote. And what the early returns so far are showing that.
What I was impressed by, being sort of a moderate, I was impressed by the moderate voters saying that and Latinos saying that the best bet to win the general come November is Bernie Sanders. That's the best bet, not just the one I like.
That's right, the best bet, because they understand. I mean, ultimately, we know that there's polling out there that shows that the Democrats are very concerned about who can defeat President Donald J. Trump. What we have in Senator Sanders is not only somebody who can defeat President Donald J. Trump, but he has a vision for this country, too.
So let's talk about that vision, because let's talk about running mates. Usually you balance the ticket when you win. Is he going to balance it, or is he going to go straight progressive? I'm trying to get you ahead of schedule.
You are getting ahead of schedule. I'm not going there. I'm not going to go for it.
What do you think? Straight progressive? Okay, let's talk about the way you organize. It seems to me you've got the moderates, even if there is this thing, 2/3 of the Democratic Party are liberal, are very liberal. That's just a fact. I pointed that earlier. Yes. And all the Senator Sanders had to do is win them, and you win the thing, because the moderates and conservatives can't seem to unite behind anybody. What happens? Do you think they're ever going to unite?
Yeah, again, if it goes back to, if Democrats are very serious about defeating the worst president in modern history, then yes, the Democrats will have to unite to do that. So the country is showing, and Nevada being the first really diverse caucus, is showing very clearly the candidate that they want to lead this country, and that's Senator Bernie Sanders. Across racial lines, even the caucuses, the strip caucuses, remember with our sisters and brothers from the culinary union? Out of there are 7.
The rank and file went with 3.
They went with them. We won 5 of those.
So what's that say about labor leadership today? That they can't lead? What's going on?
I won't say that.
Because last time around this happened.
Well, you got to have the pulse of the people. That's the key. And not the pulse of what you want to have happen, but the pulse of the people. And the beautiful thing that's happening in Nevada today with the culinary workers is that their will is done despite what some of the leaders had to say. And that they were not afraid of Medicare for all.
Do you see any obstacle now till Milwaukee?
I mean, it's still
okay. Let's talk about the money. Okay. Let's talk about Mike Bloomberg, the oligarch. You call him an oligarch. I think everybody on that side is doing it now.
Yeah.
What can can he do now? He's got to climb out of the hole next debate next week. He's got to deal with the NDA thing and all that somehow again.
I think he was on the wrong stage, Chris, the other night.
Where should he have been?
On the Republican stage. That's where he belongs. And if he was truly wanted to defeat President Trump, he wouldn't be frolicking on the Democratic side. He would be true to who he really is. When it comes to the money, as you know, 99% of the people who donated to Senator Bernie Sanders can keep donating over and over and over again. He is really showing both in deed, in terms of fundraising, and the votes so far, that he truly is the people's candidate.
And he won't take the money from Bloomberg. When Bloomberg loses, he promises to give all that money to whoever wins.
Who does?
Bloomberg said he's going to give
Bloomberg
he said he's going to give it even to Bernie if he wins.
He's going to try to use his money for some good, huh?
Well, you're riding high. Thank you, dear. Thank you, Senator Trent. This lady's been with this guy from the beginning, and she's going to be there for the victory, it looks like. Thank you. Back to you, Brian.
Thanks to Chris Matthews and the Senator. I hope everyone here in the desert is enjoying their dry, arid day. As you can imagine, watching from home, this rain in Las Vegas is the talk of Las Vegas. Indoor rainstorms, old hat. They're in just about every casino. They've known how to do that for 30, 40 years. In a town where much is artificial, the rain, the lightning right now in Las Vegas is absolutely real. I have a question for Nicole Wallace in New York. And Nicole, it is this. I wrote down this previous Chris Matthews quote. This is about Bernie becoming the front runner and what he can expect. They're going to kill him, but they may not stop him. Chris said that many hours ago. Does this, do you think, sharpen down the attacks that Bernie will get from the guy with unlimited resources in this race?
We'll see. I mean, the Bloomberg strategy to date has been to set all of his firepower on the man in the Oval Office, and that's Donald Trump. Bloomberg's reason for being and his reason for being willing to support whomever the Democrats select as their nominee is to help that person. If it's him, it's him. If it's Bernie Sanders, he's offered to help the Sanders campaign or whomever Democratic primary voters select. Bloomberg's reason for being in the arena right now is to defeat Donald Trump. If he pivots and tries to take out Bernie Sanders, now that he is such a strong and dominant and clear frontrunner, it's dicey, but I don't think that which is dicey or expensive has ever discouraged Mike Bloomberg from doing anything. And I think that we have done a good job giving voice to the two sides of the coin. And I lived this in 2016. The people that loved Donald Trump loved him a lot. And the people that were scared that President Trump would obliterate the rule of law, would bring the paying off of porn stars into that sacred Oval Office. I mean, the people that had their concerns, those concerns were right too. So both sides of that equation were correct. The Bernie Sanders question is whether or not a majority of Americans will elect to the Oval Office a Democratic Socialist. The answer is unknowable. But the people that support him, they, as Joy Reid said most articulately, he speaks to their rage, he speaks to their fears, and he's got plans for their future. The people that are scared that he can't win are probably more scared about Donald Trump than they are about Bernie Sanders. So I think Bloomberg just hangs over the whole thing as this sort of unknowable X factor.
Superb answer. Thank you for that, Nicole Wallace, from our temporary base here in Las Vegas, where, again, talk of the town is what's going on outside. There's never a slow weekend here, but this particular weekend, Nevada Democratic Caucuses, there's a hockey game in there for good measure. There's tonight's prize fight, NASCAR race tomorrow. So it's a busy time for Las Vegas to be up to the gunnels in rainwater. We have reason to believe we're getting new numbers when we come back.
If my life is about making music, my drive needs to be all about hearing it.
You have to rely on your gear, the way it feels, the way it does exactly what you need it to do.
The F-Pace, how Jaguar
makes an SUV. For great offers, visit your Jaguar retailer during the Impeccable Timing sales event.
5 years ago, I had psoriasis everywhere. my skin hurt, I felt gross. But then I started Cosentix, and I haven't really had to think about it.
Real people with psoriasis look and feel better with Cosentix. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentix. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor about an infection or symptoms. If your inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen, or if you've had a vaccine or plan to, serious allergic reactions may occur. Ask your dermatologist about Cosentix.
As a caricature artist, I appreciate what makes each person unique. That's why I like Liberty Mutual. They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Almost done? What do you think?
I don't see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Winning awards is great, but doing all the work that takes you there, that's the hard part. At Verizon, being reliable means working to always be reliable. It's why we earned more awards again this year, just like last year, and the year before, and years before that. All these awards are real proof that we built a network that really works for you. The network more people rely on. Now experience America's most awarded network on the phone you love, the amazing iPhone. Plus up to $650 off the latest iPhone when you switch, with Apple Music included.
Statement necklace? Or let your neck make the statement.
Gold Bond Neck and Chest firms and repairs depleted skin, and new Neck and Chest Age Defense with SPF helps protect from visible signs of premature aging. Gold Bond, Ultimate Lotion, Ultimate Skin.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 room sale. Buy one room, get floors for all other rooms for just $50 each. So when you buy one room, it's only $50 for laminate in the kitchen, $50 for carpet in the bedroom, and $50 for hardwood in the office. There's no limit. Buy one room and it's $50 for floors in each additional room. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today, do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen. Healthier brain, better life.
During Wayfair's Mattress Markdowns event, save up to 65% off top mattress brands. Now through February 24th, score extra savings on mattresses from Tempur-Pedic, Serta, Beautyrest, and Sealy, starting at just $3.99. Kick back and relax while we do all the heavy lifting. Because every single mattress ships free. You don't want to snooze on these deals. Shop now through February 24th, only at Wayfair.com. Wayfair, you've got just what I need.
The latest numbers, such as they are from the Nevada caucuses, the two most important things are in the upper right-hand corner. In addition to the 1% of the vote in, too early to call. Before we get to David Plouffe, who has rejoined us here in our studios in Las Vegas, to Steve Kornacki, we go for an update. Steve?
Yes, Brian. So again, we're looking at these same results here, official results from the state Democratic Party. Remember, they run this thing, and these are the official final results. These will eventually be the official final results. What these are, this is the percentage of delegates that the candidates are winning at these caucuses around the state. That's how they determine the winner of these statewide caucuses. And the mystery here, when these numbers came in a few minutes ago, is where in the state are they from? And the state party did not provide those to us in a way that was particularly useful. Hopefully that will change. But we went and we found them. There are 28 precincts that are accounting for these early numbers that you're seeing right here. And if you're seeing Sanders not doing as well, 29% here, as he is in those other numbers we've been showing you from our spotters around the state, the reason is it looks like not many of the precincts that have been reported out so far are from down here. Clark County, that's the Las Vegas Valley, like 70% of the vote is going to come from this one county, but only 29% of these precincts are from Clark County. Also, you look up here, Washoe County, Reno, that area, Sparks, that's going to make up about 20% statewide, and that is actually where Sanders seems to be doing a little bit worse than in the Las Vegas Valley. That accounts for 43% of this, and the rest comes from in here, from the sort of vast interior of Nevada. The exit polling is showing us that Sanders is running double digits better around Las Vegas than he is in the rest of the state. And the rest of the state is kind of disproportionately represented in these initial results we're seeing. So again, we are hoping this is a sign that we're going to get a lot more results soon, but you're seeing these numbers on the screen right now of Sanders statewide being at 29%. It looks like the weaker Sanders areas are overrepresented here from our quick read of these 28 precincts that have reported so far.
Steve Kornacki, thanks. As promised, David Plouffe is here with us in our studios. David, what do you make of Carville's comments today that if the party doesn't come together, come to grips with the fact that they have a front runner that many of them might find limiting, then in his words, he doesn't know the party?
Well, what is the party? The party's voters these days. There's no smoky back room where these decisions are made. So ultimately, if Bernie Sanders is not going to be the nominee, it's up to one of the candidates to build the kind of campaign, excitement, show the kind of growth to be his number one contestant. So first of all, yeah, so somebody who's a 79-year-old Democratic Socialist on Election Day might not be in the screenplay of how you beat Donald Trump. We don't know yet if Bernie Sanders will be a terrible nominee or a good nominee. That's what campaigns are for. I have two concerns that I think Bernie Sanders' campaign should address. One is, in a presidential campaign, the Electoral College chessboard is so important. How many states are you really putting in play? And I worry that Sanders is going to struggle more than some other candidates in Arizona, North Carolina, and Florida. So it's on the Sanders campaign to show us they can be competitive there. Secondly, we see some polling, whether it's accurate or not, that shows he's really struggling with suburban women who were such a cornerstone of the Democrats having such a great 2018. Mm-hmm. So I think he needs to show strength there. But I do think he's got a very powerful economic message that will get back some of those Trump-Obama voters. So I think ultimately the voters are going to decide in November if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, if he's strong. But right now, there's no magic bag of tricks anybody has. It's on the people running for president right now. So the only person that can stop Bernie Sanders is one of the other candidates. And the clock is ticking. They're almost out of time. So I think if this doesn't narrow down to a two-person race really quickly with someone who's able not to come in a second place 30 behind Sanders, but is literally getting 40, 45, or 50 so that they can stay even on the delegates, they're not going to win. So I understand that a Democratic Socialist, We've learned that somebody like that cannot win the general election. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I'd say about Bernie Sanders is he's run a good campaign. He's got a lot of money. He's got a lot of passion. So ultimately, I think it's on his campaign to show the rest of the party that, one, they'll unite. They will be an open and welcoming nominee if, in fact, that's the case, and that they can show strength with suburban voters and in parts of the country like Arizona, North Carolina, Florida, and Georgia that we need to put in play.
The top elected official in the Democratic Party is Nancy Pelosi of California. It is reported that on a conference call this week, she said to her caucus regarding what to run on, 6 words: healthcare, healthcare, healthcare.
Exactly. So if Bernie Sanders is the nominee, or anyone who's a nominee, if you're a vulnerable House Democrat, whether you're an incumbent or a challenger, I think you say, listen, I'm going to vote for whoever will get rid of Donald Trump. If you're an incumbent, you say, I just voted to impeach him. But I have my own agenda. Yeah. And so I think this is right. So if we can't win the health care debate against Donald Trump as Democrats, we do not deserve to win the White House. He's incredibly vulnerable. I do think Medicare for All potentially makes that more challenging, but that's the campaign within a campaign that's so important. And so I think Bernie Sanders is going to have to really begin to broaden out his health care messaging. Because right now, we won 18 because we put Trump and the Republicans on the defensive. Right now, that is not part of the discussion. It's all about the differences our own candidates have. So when we have a nominee, I think they're going to be able to put pressure on Trump on health care. And again, if we don't win that debate, we don't deserve to win the White House, and we're not going to win the White House.
Will this be a 1 or 2 candidate Democratic race after Super Tuesday?
Well, ultimately, it's going to be candidates looking themselves in the mirrors and being honest about their positioning. If it is more than a 2-candidate race, certainly if it's a 4 or 5 candidate race, Bernie Sanders can walk to the nomination getting 35, 36, 37% of the vote. Yeah. So the question is, everyone, particularly when some people have money, they've got support, they've got money. As James said, it's really hard to end a campaign. You're competitive, you're out there, I've got another set of contests. But if you don't have a pathway to a credible delegate argument that you can be the nominee, I think you have to get out. Who's that person going to be? We're going to learn a lot in the next 2 weeks. Bloomberg's got all the money to go all the way to June, if not July. I think it'll be the candidate that shows potential with minority voters, African Americans and Latinos. Joe Biden showed some of that tonight in Nevada. We'll see if he can carry that forward to South Carolina. But basically, if Brian, if it's March 3rd and we're talking about Klobuchar, Buttigieg, Warren, Biden, Bloomberg and Sanders, and everybody's in, Bernie's going to win almost all the delegates he needs to build an impenetrable delegate lead. That's just math. It's not my opinion. It's just simple math.
David Plouffe with the simple math. Not so simple for some of the folks in this race, however. Those searching for a metaphor, Las Vegas awoke to some cloudy skies, and then they got very dark indeed over the past couple of minutes. They are now breaking up, and the late afternoon sun is showing, and the skies have cleared. Pay no attention to this thing behind us. It's as fake as many of the facades along the Strip, quite frankly. But we've just passed the top of the 7 p.m. hour on the East Coast of the United States. Another long day's journey in tonight in terms of counting the vote and figuring out just what the story is. We're covering here for the Nevada 2020 Democratic Caucuses. Steve Kornacki with the very latest numbers at the board.
All right, Brian, here we go again. State party starting to report these out. This is what we saw the last time you checked in. What's different is we are now starting to get these broken out by county across the state here. You see different colors for the leaders here. Again, this is 28 precincts out of 2,100 that are reporting. And as I've been saying, the thing to look at here is when all the votes finally are in these two counties that I'm circling. This is Clark County down here, Las Vegas area. This is Washoe County. This is Reno. This is Sparks. These are going to be like 90% of all the votes that are cast. This whole area outside of those two counties is going to add up to about 10%. What you're actually seeing here, since it's only 28 counties, 28 precincts that are reporting at this point, right now, more than a quarter of what we have is coming from sort of the interior of the state. Only a couple of precincts here. I think it's 8 out of Clark County. And I'm taking a look. I got my Clark County map down here, precinct by precinct. I'm looking. They're not the precincts that we expected Sanders to be doing really well in here. So, in fact, you actually see Biden leading in Clark County among those. So this is a very unrepresentative sample of the state. We are waiting and hoping for more to be coming in. This process has been a little bit disjointed, as you can see, the different levels of reporting. But this is the official one. The one from the state party. They've got 28 of 2,100 precincts that are in right now. We're starting to get them by county by county. That wasn't the case a couple minutes ago. And again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but we are hoping, Brian, in the next couple of minutes that this thing is going to be filling in a lot more substantially.
To Nicole Wallace and friends in New York. Nicole?
Thank you, my friend. Former Senator Claire McCaskill's rejoined us, Robert Gibbs and Joshua Johnson. Robert Gibbs, I want to ask you about David Plouffe's point about health care. We shouldn't skip over that. Nancy Pelosi, health care. Right. The decisive frontrunner in the Democratic primary is someone who's for Medicare for all. How do you square those two?
Well, I think, as David said, Medicare for all makes that argument much more complicated. I think if you watch the 2018 elections as a Democratic strategist and you're walking into the 2020 elections, you want Medicare for all or this public option discussion replaced with pre-existing conditions. That's quite frankly
the Biden position.
That's what drew, well, yeah, I mean, that's what drew those white suburban women that David was also talking about into the Democratic fold and got them excited because it's a kitchen table issue.
Right.
And I think that's, I agree with everything David said in terms of Bernie Sanders, if he's the nominee, is going to have to make a broader health care argument. Because in reality, Medicare for all is not going to be debated anytime soon, either under President Bernie Sanders, right? Because, quite frankly, the Senate isn't going to take it up. And certainly if it's Mitch McConnell's U.S. Senate, it's not going to happen. So then the question is, what's next? And so, again, I think that's going to be on him. Another point I think David made that was really smart was this is the first state that is voting that isn't 90+% white for Democratic voters. This is a state that looks far more like the country and, quite frankly, a lot of what's coming. The 4 biggest prizes on Super Tuesday
look like Nevada. We're going to listen to Amy Klobuchar and pick this up on the other side.
What an amazing group. I was laughing. I came by and I saw someone's shirt over here, and it says, "This isn't flyover country to me. I live here." So I want to, first of all, thank our great speakers today. Peggy Flanagan, our Lieutenant Governor, who we adore. She's been campaigning for me all over the country. As you know, the highest ranking American Indian elected to statewide office in the country. And we're really proud of her. Beirut, thank you. Where are you so much for the beautiful words. Our mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, thank you. And what an honor to have David Wellstone here with us. And David has been carrying on his dad's work on mental health. I see him in Congress all the time. And I think you all know there's one reason I picked the color green for our signs and our shirts, and that is Paul Wellstone. Because as you all know, Senator Wellstone was not expected to win. He was not expected because he was running against someone who had a bigger bank account, right? Who was more well-known. And he literally floored the country. And that is exactly what we're going to do in this campaign. So, we left Nevada, although it's raining right now there, but it was beautiful all week, and we had such a great time, such hospitality. We have a great team down there, still working hard. They're counting the votes. But as usual, I think we have exceeded expectations. I always note that a lot of people didn't even think that I would still be standing at this point. They didn't think I'd make it through that speech in the snow. They didn't think I'd make it to the debate floor. But time and time again, because of all of you and because of the people around this country that want something different than the guy in the White House, we have won. So I want you to know, first of all, our itinerary. We are headed, of course, to South Carolina. But on the way tomorrow, we are going to Fargo. I challenge my opponents to do a rally in Fargo. We are doing one. We're pretty excited about that. We are then going to Little Rock. We are then going to Oklahoma City. And then we go to South Carolina. So that is our plan. And I think you all know that not only is South Carolina an important state and where we're going to have the next debate, but from there we go to Super Tuesday. And 1/3 of America is going to be voting. And guess what one of the Super Tuesday states is? That's right. So John and I actually went and voted today, and I was actually amazed at all the people there on Saturday voting early, and so we recommend everyone vote early, but not often. So we want to thank you for doing that. And I would say, first of all, I think that people are starting to see that in today's politics, and this really came to us out of New Hampshire, where the nation discovered me in a big way for the first time, that empathy, humility, decency matter, and that we have that in spades, and also the toughness to beat Donald Trump. And because of you, we have proved the naysayers wrong every single time. Because of you, we have built a campaign as strong and resilient as the hard-working Americans of our country. Because of you, we're going to turn back the division and the exclusion, the meanness and the hate, and defeat Donald Trump this fall. That is our plan. So some believe that the way to beat Donald Trump is to be just as polarizing. Could you say that again? Okay. And I think what we know is this, that Donald Trump's worst nightmare is that the people in the middle, the people that are tired of the mudslinging and the name-calling, will have a place to call home this November. And that has been our mission from the beginning. So if you're working 2 jobs but still struggling to choose between medicine and rent, you have a home with me. If you're frightened for your kids' safety and sick of NRA lobbyists blocking gun violence laws, then you have a home with me. If you're trying to raise a family and tired of corporate titans lining their pockets while you are sewing the holes in yours, you have a home with me. And if you think it is shameful that an American can be stopped and profiled because of the color of his skin, if you're sick of a president that sees diversity as a weakness rather than our country's great strength, then you have a home with me. And there is something else that I've been fighting for, and that is to bring heart back to the White House. To restore that basic empathy, that fundamental decency that's been under siege since this president wrote his first toxic tweet. That was many tweets ago. I'm talking about a president who bragged about the size of his rallies while visiting a Texas hospital after a gunman killed 22 people at a local Walmart. I'm talking about a president who sided with the murderous dictator Kim Jong-un after a 22-year-old American student died in North Korea in their custody for trying to take a poster from a hotel. I'm talking about a president who separated innocent immigrant children from their parents and tried to deny them toothbrushes and soap and showers, and then said, and I quote, "You have to take the children away." Well, you can quote me on this. We have to take this president away. And if you think we can't do it, if you think that we don't have the grit, the resilience to turn the page on the racism, on the sexism, on the cronyism, and the corruption, just remember that the day after this president took office, millions of people marched in protest all across this country, including in this city, including where I'm going tomorrow, to North Dakota, and to Oklahoma, and to Arkansas, and to South Carolina. And then what happened? Thousands of women signed up to run for office. We were not just resisting, we were insisting on a better way forward. That summer, as that president tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act and its protections for families, millions stood up and said no. And with that mandate, we handed him a crushing defeat. We were not just resisting, we were insisting on a better way forward. In 2018, what happened? Well, we saw the highest voter turnout in a midterm election in 50 years. Women, people of color, all ran for office and won big. And we turned the House of Representatives back into the people's house again. That's what we did. So don't go telling me we can't do this. Don't go telling me, because what I see is that we're not just resisting, we're insisting on a better way forward. And when I go to our rallies all over the country, what do I see? We were just in Aurora, Colorado. What do I see? A fired up Democratic base, big time. But I also see, at least at my rallies, other people joining us, independents, moderate Republicans, people that say, we want to be part of this. And what we do is we say this: we don't want to shut people out, we want to bring people with us. So, Donald Trump can count us out if he wants. By the way, for the first time ever, he mentioned me at a rally. Yes! So that's what, you know I've arrived now. You know they must be worried. And so as you see all these attacks, you're going to see it against me. Just remember, it is a badge of honor. It means that we are gaining in every single state in this country. And I am here to serve Donald Trump notice. I have won every race, every place, every time. I have won in 42 counties, flipped them, that he was so proud when he won them, and then I came roaring back in our own state. I have won every single congressional district in this state every time. And when you look at those swing states, you look in the middle of the country where we need to win. States like Pennsylvania, where a poll just showed me beating him by 7 points. You look at that. You look at those states like Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio and Iowa and, yes, our own state. And what are we going to do? We are going to build a beautiful blue wall of Democratic votes around those states, and we're going to make Donald Trump pay for it.
Amy Klobuchar back home in Minneapolis. David Plouffe with us here in Las Vegas. In your view, is that a woman with a new lease on life? Is she trying to re-up her old lease on life? What kind of a future, despite the rosy words intended for the hometown crowd, what kind of a future does a candidate at her level face?
I mean, it's an immense challenge. So, first of all, people are voting in many of the Super Tuesday states. I don't think she's advertising at all, or maybe barely. And, you know, I think her chances of being viable in states like California and Texas, I think, are very unlikely. So, you know, she talked about going to North Dakota. She may get some delegates there. I'd be surprised if she's not viable. But is that a pathway to the nomination? So, you know, she already, as well as she did in New Hampshire, let's remember she came in third. She didn't win. Surged at the end. Great debate performance. Question, can you capture the magic of that and turn it into not a fifth in Nevada, being in the top 3 in Nevada, top 3 in South Carolina, which still probably means you don't win, but may allow you to raise money and have some ability to be viable in most places on Super Tuesday. So, you know, I'm sure, I think what's going on with a lot of these candidates, Brian, will be, so let's just say, and this may not be true, all the non-Sanders candidates would prefer a different nominee. But but the thing they really don't want to have happen is they get out, and one of that other crowd is the standing, right? So
as long as the nominee is.
So I think it's like you're running so hard for president, you're obsessed. It's all you're doing. So the physics of that is hard to defy. I'm going to get out. And then it's like, what, me? Why should I get out for you? And so that is going to work to Bernie Sanders' favor if basically everybody who competed in Nevada today is still running around the country getting votes and some delegates on Super Tuesday. That's going to accrue to the benefit of the frontrunner.
And Claire McCaskill, with your political antennae, as you listen to a former colleague in the Senate, what do you take away from that speech in Minneapolis?
Well, a couple of things. The states she's choosing to go to, she's trying to go to states that a more moderate candidate would usually have more success: South Dakota, Arkansas, Oklahoma. She's in Minnesota. Keep in mind, Minnesota is one of the Super Tuesday states, and I think she wants to have a big win there, and it would make her nervous to have Bernie nipping at her heels, even if he's 5 or 6 or 7 points behind her. But the biggest problem for Amy is that this speech didn't feel like "Hello, America, I'm Amy Klobuchar." It felt a little bit, we're still in it, we're going to stay in it no matter what. And the money thing, and David's talked about this several times, but whether she can raise enough resources to really compete in the huge number of markets that she's got to become well known in these Super Tuesday states. We'll see how fundraising goes the next 24 hours, but I have to think it's going to be tough for any of the candidates who don't finish in the top 3 in Nevada.
And more than that, David Plouffe, how much of the vote, as we keep asking, is going to be already committed by the time she had her good debate performance?
Well, that's exactly right. So, in California and Texas and many other states, a lot of the votes coming in, that's going to increase every day. So if you don't have momentum nationally to capitalize in those states, you're going to pay a price for that. So the numbers we're seeing in Nevada today, I think there will be some distinctions, declare points in states like Oklahoma and North Dakota, where Bernie might not do quite as well, although we'll see about that. But in the states that are more representative, like Nevada, I think you're going to see basically, as people are voting early in California and Texas, it's probably falling roughly along the lines we have now. So for someone to overperform on Super Tuesday, they're going to have just almost a historically great debate performance next week and close in South Carolina with huge momentum, and then basically take that into Super Tuesday. And that's really a degree of difficulty that we've rarely seen in politics.
Yeah, that's a lot. We have so much more ahead, some of it because the candidates are reacting on a slow-rolling basis to the fact that the information is coming out to us on a slow-rolling basis. On the right there on your screen, you see the International Brotherhood of Electric Workers Union headquarters. That's going to be the backdrop for when we hear from Joe Biden, which could be momentarily. A lot more coverage ahead for our team. We'll start by taking a break, and we'll be right back.
And Doug.
Can save you lots of money with Liberty Mutual. We customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
When you shop with Wayfair, you spend less and get way more. So you can bring your vision to life and save in more ways than one. For small prices, you can build big dreams. Spend less, get way more. Shop everything home at Wayfair today.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with a need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
All straight, we ain't stopping, believe me. Go straight till the morning, no lie, we won't wait. And we're taking everything we want and we can do it. All straight.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yes, the first word to any adventure. But when allergies and congestion strike, take Allegra D, a non-drowsy antihistamine plus a powerful decongestant. So you can always say yes to putting your true colors on display. Say yes to Allegra D.
Before we talk about tax-smart investing, what's new?
Audrey's expecting.
Twins.
Maybe closer to the twins.
Changing plans.
At Fidelity, a change in plans is always part of the plan.
It's time for the ultimate Sleep Number event on the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It's the final days to save 50% on the Sleep Number 360 limited edition Smart Bed, plus 0% interest for 24 months and Sunday.
Cover it up. That's what I did when I started losing my hair. Then I realized
I could actually do something. Now I use Keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1 a day, which means no more covering up. Get started at Keeps.com.
Framebridge, the living room. Framebridge, upstate. Framebridge, the big painting that Kevin did. The Red House. The cafes in Paris. Framebridge, Strawberry Man. Framebridge, Silly. Framebridge, the anniversary. Framebridge, a wall of us. You can Framebridge just about anything. Live life, frame more.
We eat to live, but food is so much more than that. It's actually baked into our culture and our politics. I'm Andrew Zimmern. I'm exploring our country, looking at the biggest social and political questions of the day through the lens of food. From fields to fisheries, our climate is in crisis.
Climate change is becoming something we can taste.
How is the climate crisis affecting the food we eat? Find out on the next What's Eating America.
We are back. Two different venues we're watching. Sanders' second stop in Texas on the left. He has packed an enormous dance hall there. And on the right, the union headquarters, where we are moments away, we've been told, from hearing from Joe Biden. Mike Memley is our correspondent traveling with him. And, Mike, I know your job is not strategist, but perhaps you've been sniffing around. What are they going to have their guy do post-Nevada that he hasn't been doing?
Well, Brian, the formula all along for the Biden campaign in terms of their view of how he wins the nomination was to narrow this contest as quickly as possible to the Joe Biden wing of the Democratic Party versus the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. Now, of course, after stumbles in Iowa and New Hampshire, their argument since has been that until we hear from the base constituencies of the Democratic Party, African-American voters and Latino voters, we should discount everything we've seen so far. They're nervously watching those numbers tonight, hoping he does indeed stay in this second place position. And then the argument becomes, I bet a little bit what he said to me earlier today when we caught up with him at a caucus site, that the Democratic Party needs to consider who is authentic, who can go toe-to-toe with President Trump, with plans that are achievable and real, a clear shot at Bernie Sanders. And then they also made the point of who is the most electable Democrat. I think you'll see in South Carolina an argument, who can help Jamie Harrison beat Lindsey Graham, who can help Joe Cunningham, a freshman Republican, get reelected. And as you can hear, the vice president is now being introduced behind me, Brian.
Mike Memley, thanks for that. We'll watch the vice president enter the union headquarters here in Las Vegas for the IBEW with his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, with him. We will